Mirror body language. I understand you. I'm like you. Mirror body language is a subtle yet incredibly powerful psychological technique that can make people feel an almost magnetic connection to you without them realizing why. It works by reflecting another person's physical gestures, posture, and even facial expressions in a way that feels natural and unforced. Humans are hardwired to respond to familiarity, and when someone mirrors us, it's as if they are silently saying, this sense of likeness triggers trust and comfort on a deep, subconscious level. From our earliest days, we are wired to mimic. Babies mirror their parents' smiles, friends unconsciously adopt each other's slang, and couples often begin to share the same mannerisms over time. This happens because of mirror neurons in the brain, which light up both when we perform an action and when we observe someone else doing it, allowing us to feel what others feel. By intentionally mirroring someone, you tap into this primal mechanism, making them instinctively lean closer, physically and emotionally. The effect is most potent when done with care. If they lean forward, you lean forward a few moments later. If they cross their arms, you follow suit subtly. Too much mirroring too quickly feels creepy, but when done naturally, it makes the other person feel seen, understood, and safe. It's not just about copying movements. Matching someone's speaking pace, tone, and energy level creates an invisible thread of connection. When someone feels emotionally mirrored, whether in excitement, sadness, or frustration, they feel validated in their experience, and this builds rapid rapport. In skilled hands, mirroring can melt defenses, draw out hidden thoughts, and open doors that logic alone could never unlock. Match voice tone. Matching voice tone is one of the most underestimated yet deeply persuasive techniques in human interaction. It works by subtly aligning your vocal energy, pace, and rhythm with the person you're speaking to, creating an unconscious sense of harmony. When you match the way someone speaks, it's as if you're stepping into their emotional world, making them feel instantly understood without a single extra word. Humans don't just listen with their ears, they feel voices in their bodies, and a familiar tone disarms the brain's defenses. Think about how comforting it is when someone speaks to you in a way that matches your current state. If you're upset and they approach softly and slowly, you feel safe. If you're excited and they respond with matching enthusiasm, you feel validated. This alignment triggers a powerful subconscious signal. We're on the same wavelength. The brain translates this as trust, rapport, and even a sense of belonging. The magic lies in subtlety. If someone is calm and deliberate, slow your own speech to match. If they're animated and fast-paced, let your words carry the same energy. Matching pitch, volume, and even pauses creates a rhythm that feels natural and connected. Over time, people instinctively relax around you, drop their guard, and become more receptive to your words. The technique also works in reverse. Once matched, you can gently shift your tone to guide someone's mood. This is why skilled negotiators, therapists, and leaders master it, to connect, influence, and steer emotions without force. In the right moment, a well-matched voice can feel like a hand reaching into someone's heart and holding it steady. Use silence. Silence is one of the most unnerving yet profoundly effective tools in psychological influence. In a world where people rush to fill every pause, choosing not to speak can carry more weight than any words ever could. When you use silence deliberately, you create a space that others instinctively feel compelled to fill, often revealing more than they intended or agreeing to things they hadn't fully considered. The human brain dislikes uncertainty, and silence is a void it desperately tries to close. Imagine asking a question and simply waiting, holding their gaze, saying nothing. That stillness builds pressure. Their mind races to interpret your quiet as authority, disapproval, curiosity, or deep contemplation. In negotiations, this pressure often pushes people to speak impulsively, offering concessions or additional information to break the tension. In personal relationships, it can draw out truths that words might otherwise hide. Silence also amplifies your presence. When you stop speaking at the right moment, especially after delivering something important, you force the listener to sit with it, to let your words echo in their mind. It's like dropping a stone into still water and watching the ripples spread. That pause gives your message weight, turning it from background noise into something unforgettable. The secret is control. Your silence should feel intentional, not awkward or unsure. A calm, steady expression tells the other person you are comfortable with the quiet, which makes them less comfortable in turn. And in that discomfort, they often give you what you're waiting for, whether it's an answer, an agreement, or the truth they've been holding back. Lower your voice. Lowering your voice is a deceptively simple yet incredibly powerful psychological technique that can instantly shift the dynamics of any interaction. When you speak in a calmer, deeper, and slower tone, you project authority, control, and quiet confidence. People instinctively lean in, both physically and mentally, to catch your words, giving you their full attention without even realizing it. Humans are wired to associate deeper, steadier voices with leadership and safety. In nature, loud and frantic sounds signal chaos, while low, measured tones signal stability. By lowering your voice, you tap into this primal association, telling the listener on a subconscious level, I'm in control here and you can trust me. It's why experienced negotiators, therapists, and leaders rarely raise their voices. They draw people in instead of pushing them away. The effect is magnified in moments of tension. When emotions run high, most people speak faster and louder, but lowering your voice does the opposite. It disrupts the pattern, diffuses aggression, and forces the other person to match your calm. This subtle shift can de-escalate conflicts, redirect conversations, and make your words land with far more weight than if you try to overpower them. The key is consistency. Lowering your voice isn't about mumbling or speaking too softly. It's about controlled projection, where every word feels intentional. Pair it with deliberate pauses and steady eye contact, and you create a sense of command that no shouting could ever achieve. Over time, people begin to anticipate your words, hanging on to each one as if it carries more meaning simply because you made them work a little harder to hear it. Slow nodding. Slow nodding is a subtle yet deeply persuasive nonverbal cue that can shape the way people respond to you without them even realizing it. When you nod slowly while someone is speaking, you send a silent message. I'm listening. I understand. I agree. This tiny gesture taps into a deep human need for validation, making the speaker feel heard, respected, and encouraged to keep talking. The brain is constantly scanning for signals of acceptance. A slow, steady nod triggers feelings of approval and rapport, creating a subconscious push toward alignment with you. Unlike fast nodding, which can seem impatient or overeager, slow nodding feels deliberate, grounded, and trustworthy. It tells the other person you are not only engaged, but also fully present in the moment. This technique is especially potent when you want someone to open up or agree with your perspective. As they talk, your slow nodding creates a rhythm of affirmation that encourages them to continue, often revealing more than they planned. In persuasive settings, it can subtly steer someone toward agreement, as the human mind tends to mirror perceived consensus. In high-stakes conversations, slow nodding works like an emotional anchor. It keeps the other person calm, reassures them they are on the right track, and deepens the sense of connection. Even when you remain silent, your nod speaks volumes, gently guiding the emotional tone of the interaction. When used with intention, paired with steady eye contact and a relaxed expression, slow nodding can make people feel drawn to you, understood by you, and far more willing to follow your lead without ever questioning why. Say their name. Using someone's name is one of the most intimate and persuasive tools in communication, and yet it's so subtle most people don't realize how deeply it affects them. A person's name is tied to their identity, their sense of self, and even their emotions. From the moment we are born, hearing our name is wired into us as a signal that we matter, that someone's attention is focused directly on us. When you say someone's name in conversation, you're not just addressing them, you're validating their existence in that moment. Psychologically, our brains light up when we hear our own name. It triggers a unique neural response, making us instantly more alert and receptive. In a crowded room, you could ignore dozens of voices, but if someone says your name, it cuts through like a blade. This is why skilled communicators, salespeople, leaders, negotiators use names deliberately. They understand it makes the other person feel seen, important, and connected. The effect is amplified when used strategically. Saying someone's name when giving praise makes the compliment land deeper. Using it in moments of tension softens resistance and personalizes your words. Dropping it right before making a request can make the listener feel a subconscious pull to agree, as if you've reached directly into their attention span and anchored yourself there. But overuse kills the magic. If you repeat someone's name too often, it feels manipulative or insincere. The real power lies in weaving it naturally into conversation, making it feel like a thread that subtly binds you together. Done right, it's more than just a word. It's a key to unlocking trust and influence. Repeat key words. Repeating key words is a subtle yet highly persuasive psychological technique that signals deep listening and creates an almost magnetic pull for the other person to keep talking. When you echo the most emotionally charged or meaningful words they've just said, it tells their subconscious, I hear you, I get you, and what you're saying matters. This makes people feel understood on a level that bypasses logic and taps directly into emotion. Imagine someone says, I just feel overwhelmed at work. If you gently reply, overwhelmed, and let the silence hang, they will almost always elaborate, giving you more details, revealing vulnerabilities, or opening doors they hadn't planned to. By repeating their chosen words, you subtly guide them deeper into their own thoughts and emotions, creating a stronger connection and gaining valuable insight. This technique works because people are emotionally invested in the language they choose. When you reflect those exact words back, it bypasses the need for translation or interpretation. You're speaking their emotional language. It also engages their natural need to expand and clarify, especially when they feel someone is genuinely listening. The real magic is in delivery. Keep your tone curious, not robotic. You're not parroting. You're signaling that the word they used struck a chord. When done well, this technique can make someone feel truly seen, even in a brief interaction. Skilled negotiators, interviewers, and therapists use it to extract hidden truths and strengthen rapport. It's disarmingly simple, yet in the right moment, repeating just one or two key words can feel like holding up a mirror to someone's soul and inviting them to share more. Make small mistakes. Making small mistakes on purpose is a counterintuitive yet highly effective psychological tactic that can disarm suspicion, lower defenses, and make you seem more relatable. When you appear slightly imperfect, people instinctively see you as more human, approachable, and trustworthy. Perfection often feels intimidating, distant, or even fake, while a harmless slip can make others feel at ease around you. This effect is rooted in what psychologists call the pratfall effect. Studies have shown that competent people who make small blunders are often liked more than those who appear flawless. A tiny mispronunciation, dropping a pen, or momentarily forgetting a word sends a subtle message. I'm just like you. That shared sense of humanity makes people more open to your influence. because they stop seeing you as a distant authority and start seeing you as an ally. The key is intentionality. The mistake must be harmless and easily recoverable, something that doesn't actually undermine your credibility. A small error in a presentation you immediately correct, or a lighthearted, self-deprecating remark can build rapport while keeping your competence intact. If you overdo it, you risk looking careless. If you choose the wrong moment, you might seem unprepared. Skilled persuaders use this technique to great effect in sales, negotiations, and even interviews. By appearing slightly vulnerable, they lower the other person's guard, making them more willing to share, agree, or even help. Humans naturally want to even the scales when they see someone slip, sometimes by offering support, sometimes by giving the benefit of the doubt. That instinct works in your favor, turning a tiny flaw into a powerful doorway to trust and influence. Pause before replying. Pausing before replying is one of the simplest yet most psychologically disarming techniques you can use in conversation. In a world where people rush to fill silence, taking even a few seconds before answering makes you stand out as calm, confident, and in control. This slight delay signals that you value your words, that you think before you speak, and that you are not driven by impulse. It makes others lean in, both physically and mentally, anticipating what you'll say next. This technique works on a primal level. Quick, reactive responses can feel defensive or emotional, but a measured pause carries weight. It creates the impression of authority, as if your words are worth waiting for. It also unsettles the other person just enough to keep them engaged, especially if they expect an immediate answer. In negotiations, a pause can pressure the other side into speaking first, revealing more information or softening their position before you've even spoken. The power of the pause isn't just in control, it's in the tension it creates. A well-timed silence builds anticipation, making your eventual words land harder. People will often interpret your pause as careful consideration, even if you already know what you're going to say. That perception makes them more likely to respect your viewpoint. The secret is presence. During the pause, hold steady eye contact. Keep your expression neutral and avoid fidgeting. This shows that your silence is intentional, not hesitation. In just a few seconds, you can shift the emotional balance of a conversation, making the other person work harder for your attention and more receptive to whatever follows. Play dumb. Playing dumb is one of the most underestimated yet cunning psychological tactics, precisely because it disarms people before they even realize what's happening. At its core, it's the art of downplaying your knowledge, abilities, or awareness, so others lower their guard, reveal more than they intended, or underestimate you entirely. People instinctively feel safer around someone who seems less threatening or less informed, and in that comfort, they often let slip valuable truths or give you an advantage without even knowing it. When you act as though you don't fully understand a situation, others rush to fill the gap, explaining things in more detail, exposing hidden motives, or overplaying their hand. In negotiations, this can be priceless. Pretending you don't grasp a certain term or implication prompts the other side to clarify, sometimes giving away their strategy. In social dynamics, it can make people underestimate your capabilities, allowing you to move unnoticed until the perfect moment to reveal your hand. This technique works because it flips the normal power dynamic. Most people want to feel smarter, more capable, and in control of a conversation. By letting them believe they are, you feed their ego while quietly gathering information. The key is subtlety. You don't want to look incompetent, just mildly uninformed or unaware in specific areas. Great manipulators, investigators, and even diplomats have used this to win trust, extract secrets, and catch others off guard. When you finally reveal your true understanding, it's often too late for them to recover because they've already exposed everything they never intended you to know. Foot in the door. The foot in the door technique is one of the most quietly manipulative yet brilliantly effective persuasion strategies ever discovered. It works by getting someone to agree to a small, seemingly harmless request first, one so easy to say yes to that refusal feels unnecessary. Once they've agreed, you follow up with the real, larger request you wanted all along. By that point, they are far more likely to comply, not because the second request is smaller, but because their mind has already begun to see themselves as the kind of person who says yes to you. This phenomenon works because of our deep psychological need for consistency. When we take an action, even a minor one, we subconsciously adjust our self-image to align with it. If we say yes once, we feel a subtle pressure to stay consistent and say yes again, even if the second request is much bigger. The first yes plants a seed of commitment, and the second request harvests it. Imagine asking a neighbor to watch your houseplants for a weekend. After they agree, it feels far less awkward to ask if they can also collect your mail, feed your cat, or even keep an eye on the place while you're gone for 2 weeks. They've already accepted the role of helpful neighbor, so refusing now would feel like breaking character. Skilled salespeople, fundraisers, and even political campaigns use this method constantly, getting your agreement on something small so the door to larger compliance swings wide open. It's a technique that feels harmless in the moment, but in reality, it rewires your willingness step by step until you've gone much further than you ever planned. Door in the face. The door in the face technique is a clever psychological maneuver that uses rejection as a stepping stone to compliance. It works by first making an intentionally large or unreasonable request, one you fully expect the other person to refuse. This initial big ask acts like a decoy, setting the stage for your real goal, a much smaller request that now feels like a fair compromise by comparison. The contrast between the two makes the second request far more likely to be accepted. This tactic taps into a deep social instinct, the desire to reciprocate concessions. When someone backs down from a bigger demand to something smaller, our brains interpret it as them meeting us halfway, and we feel an unspoken obligation to return the favor. In reality, the smaller request is often the one they wanted all along. Imagine asking a friend to help you move all weekend, knowing they'll say no. Immediately after, you soften your request and ask if they could just help for an hour. That hour suddenly feels reasonable, even generous, compared to the initial burden. The person feels relief that you reduced your demand and is more inclined to agree, forgetting that they're still giving you exactly what you were aiming for. Salespeople, fundraisers, and negotiators have mastered this technique to great effect. By first presenting something extreme, they shape your mental frame of what's normal, making their true request seem mild. The beauty and danger of this method is how invisible it can be. Done well, it feels like a natural exchange of fairness, when in reality, you've been guided exactly where they wanted you to go. 2 good options. Offering 2 good options is a subtle psychological strategy that shapes someone's decision while making them feel entirely in control. Instead of presenting a yes or no choice, which risks outright rejection, you frame the situation so that both outcomes benefit you. The other person feels empowered because they are making the decision, but in reality, you've already guided them into a predetermined win for yourself. The human brain is wired to prefer choice over command. When given options, we feel a sense of autonomy, even if the available paths have been carefully curated. By offering 2 appealing possibilities, you eliminate the mental resistance that comes from feeling pressured or cornered. The choice doesn't feel like compliance, it feels like freedom. Imagine a salesperson asking, "Would you like the deluxe package or the premium package?" Both are upgrades, and yet the question subtly assumes the purchase is already happening. In personal situations, asking, "Do you want to meet for coffee in the morning or the afternoon?" bypasses the question of whether to meet entirely. It directs the mind to focus on how the meeting will happen instead of if it will happen. The brilliance of this method is that it frames the interaction in your favor while leaving the other person satisfied with their agency. They walk away feeling that the decision was theirs, which increases commitment to follow through. When executed smoothly, with genuine warmth and without obvious manipulation, offering two good options can quietly guide people exactly where you want them to go, while they thank you for giving them a choice. Act disinterested. Acting disinterested is a psychological technique that plays on one of the most powerful human motivators, scarcity. People instinctively value what seems rare, unattainable, or slipping away. When you present yourself, your time, or your attention as something that isn't easily won, you create a magnetic pull that makes others want it more. This isn't about being cold or rude, it's about controlling the supply of your energy so others work to earn it. When you appear too eager, you signal abundance, and abundance lowers perceived value. But when you step back, speak less, or show only partial interest, curiosity and desire begin to build in the other person's mind. They start wondering why you're not fully engaged, and that uncertainty drives them to try harder to capture your attention. In dating, this can spark attraction. In business, it can make your offers seem exclusive. In negotiations, it can make others chase your approval instead of the other way around. This works because humans have a built-in fear of missing out. We're wired to pursue what feels scarce and to doubt the worth of what's freely available. By acting disinterested, you flip the power dynamic. Suddenly, they're the ones seeking your validation, your time, or your resources. The key is balance. Too much distance and you risk appearing arrogant or detached. Too little and you lose the effect. Done right, acting disinterested keeps you in control of the interaction without ever needing to openly demand attention. You become the prize they have to win, and that shift changes everything. Hold back praise. Holding back praise is a subtle, psychological tactic that can create a powerful pull for validation and approval. While most people shower others with compliments to build rapport, strategically withholding that approval triggers something far deeper, an almost primal need to earn it. Human beings are wired to seek recognition from those they value, and when it's absent, it creates a gap the mind feels compelled to fill. That gap becomes tension, and tension fuels action. When someone expects praise and doesn't receive it, their subconscious starts searching for ways to win it from you. They may try harder, offer more, or become more agreeable just to close the emotional distance. This works because praise isn't just a kind gesture, it's a form of social reward. Removing it, even subtly, makes the eventual approval feel rarer, more valuable, and infinitely more satisfying when it finally comes. Think of a mentor who only compliments work that truly exceeds expectations, or a leader who nods in acknowledgement instead of gushing over every effort. That restraint makes the rare moments of genuine praise feel like gold. The recipient not only treasures it, but also strives to experience it again. The key is to be deliberate, not cold. This isn't about withholding kindness or becoming emotionally distant. It's about letting approval be earned rather than given automatically. Used with skill, it keeps people engaged, motivated, and chasing your recognition, often without realizing why. The desire for acknowledgement is one of the most powerful forces in human behavior, and when you control its supply, you control the value it holds. Create scarcity. Creating scarcity is one of the most potent psychological levers for driving desire, urgency, and action. When people believe something is rare, limited, or in short supply, its perceived value skyrockets, not because its quality changes, but because our brains are wired to equate scarcity with importance. We instinctively want what we think we can't have, fearing that if we don't act now, we'll lose the chance forever. This reaction is deeply rooted in survival psychology. In our evolutionary past, resources like food, shelter, and social alliances weren't always abundant. The moment something became scarce, our ancestors moved quickly to secure it before it was gone. That same wiring still controls modern behavior, except now it's applied to concert tickets, luxury goods, job offers, or even someone's attention. Marketers and persuaders use scarcity to ignite this urgency. Limited time offers, only 3 left in stock, exclusive memberships, or closing deadlines all trigger the same internal alarm: act now or lose out. The fear of missing out, FOMO, pushes people into decisions they might otherwise delay or overthink. Scarcity also works socially. If a person, opportunity, or piece of information is framed as rare or not available to everyone, it becomes instantly more desirable. Even relationships follow this law. When someone's attention is hard to get, it feels more valuable. The key is believability. If scarcity feels fake, it backfires. But when it's genuine, it can override hesitation, push people past doubts, and lock in commitment. Done skillfully, it doesn't just sell products or ideas. It makes people chase them, fearing the sting of regret more than the cost of saying yes. Hint exclusivity. Hinting at exclusivity is a powerful psychological lever that taps directly into the human fear of missing out and the desire to belong to something rare and special. When people believe they are getting access to information, opportunities, or privileges that others can't have, their perception of value skyrockets. It's not just about what you're offering, it's about the fact that not everyone gets it. The human mind is wired to crave belonging to an inner circle. From childhood cliques to elite memberships, we equate exclusivity with status, safety, and importance. By subtly suggesting that what you're sharing is limited, private, or only for a select few, you trigger a deep emotional pull. This doesn't need to be said outright. In fact, it's more effective when implied. Phrases like, "I don't usually share this," or "I'm telling you because I trust you," plant the seed that the listener is part of something rare. The beauty of hinting at exclusivity is that it bypasses logical evaluation. People often act faster and with more commitment when they believe the window of opportunity is small and not available to just anyone. This is why luxury brands whisper about private collections and why insiders in any field tend to get the first call before the public announcement. When used well, exclusivity makes the listener feel chosen, special, and lucky. That emotional high can cement loyalty and increase the perceived worth of whatever you're offering. It's not just about selling something, it's about selling the feeling of being one of the few who knows. Give to get. Give to get is a timeless psychological principle rooted in the law of reciprocity, the deep, almost automatic human urge to return a favor. When you offer someone something of value first, whether it's your time, a compliment, useful information, or even a small gift, you plant a subtle seed of obligation in their mind. This isn't just politeness, it's hardwired into our survival instincts. For most of human history, generosity was a way to build alliances and ensure mutual support, so repaying kindness became a social reflex. When you give without demanding anything up front, you bypass defenses. People feel safer and more open because you're not asking, they're receiving. Yet beneath the surface, the psychological tension builds. That sense of "I owe them" lingers in the subconscious, making them more likely to help you, agree with you, or grant you something later on. It can be as small as holding a door or as calculated as offering valuable insight in a business meeting before making your proposal. The beauty of give to get is that it works even if the gift is small, so long as it feels genuine. A sincere gesture can outweigh something expensive if it hits the right emotional chord. However, when done strategically, this technique can shift entire negotiations. sway decisions, and deepen loyalty, all because the other person feels compelled to even the scales. It's a tool as old as human interaction itself, and in skilled hands, it turns generosity into quiet influence, where the return often far outweighs the original gift. Frame as loss. Framing as loss is one of the most emotionally charged persuasion techniques because it taps into one of the strongest forces in human psychology, loss aversion. People fear losing something far more than they desire gaining something of equal value. This isn't just preference, it's hardwired into our survival instincts. For our ancestors, losing food, shelter, or safety could mean death. That deep-rooted fear still drives modern decision-making, often without us realizing it. When you frame a choice in terms of what someone will lose instead of what they might gain, you trigger an almost automatic urgency, saying, if you don't act now, this opportunity will be gone forever, has far more impact than if you act now, you can have this. The emotional weight of imagined loss pushes people to act quickly to avoid it, often faster than logic would. This is why skilled salespeople and negotiators often focus on the consequences of inaction rather than just the benefits of action. It's the reason limited time offers, disappearing bonuses, and exclusive spots are so effective. The fear of losing something we believe is already within our reach can make even cautious people take bold steps. The technique works beyond sales. It influences relationships, career moves, and personal decisions. Highlighting what someone might lose if they delay or say no can bypass their rational hesitation and hit the survival instincts directly. When used, it doesn't just persuade, it creates a gnawing sense of now or never, and in that emotional pressure, people often choose the path that feels safest, avoiding the loss at all costs. Ask for advice. Asking for advice is a deceptively powerful psychological technique that flips the usual dynamic of influence. Instead of presenting yourself as the one with answers, you invite the other person into a position of expertise, giving them a subtle sense of importance, authority, and connection to you. When someone feels valued for their insight, they are far more likely to invest emotionally in your success, often becoming your ally without realizing it. This works because of two deep human needs, the desire to feel competent and the desire to be respected. When you ask for advice, you satisfy both. You're signaling, I trust your judgment, which feeds their ego, and you're allowing them to guide the outcome, which creates a personal stake in seeing you succeed. Psychologists call this the IKEA effect. People value things more when they've had a hand in building them, and this applies to relationships and decisions just as much as furniture. Imagine meeting someone new, and instead of trying to impress them, you say, you seem experienced in this. What would you do in my position? In that moment, they're not just talking to you, they're mentally stepping into your shoes, imagining your situation as their own. This mental shift bonds them to your outcome, making them more likely to offer help, resources, or opportunities in the future. This technique is disarming because it reverses expectations. People expect to be persuaded. They don't expect to be asked for guidance. And once they've given it, they'll often feel compelled to see it through, because helping you succeed now means proving their own advice was worth giving. Share small secret. Sharing a small secret is a deceptively powerful way to fast-track trust and emotional intimacy. When you reveal something personal, something not everyone knows, you send an unspoken message. I trust you enough to let you in. This taps into one of the deepest human needs, the desire to feel chosen and important in someone's inner world. Even a minor confession can make the other person feel closer to you, as if they've been granted rare access to your true self. Humans are wired to reciprocate vulnerability. When you share something, their instinct is to share something back. This mutual exchange creates a private bond, a sense of us that outsiders aren't part of. The power lies in the intimacy, not the magnitude of the secret. It doesn't have to be earth-shattering. A quirky habit, an embarrassing childhood story, or a hidden preference can be enough to spark the connection. The emotional effect is amplified because secrets carry a subtle weight. When someone holds even a tiny piece of your hidden truth, they feel trusted, significant, and uniquely positioned in your life. This can make them more open, more cooperative, and more likely to see you as an ally. Skilled persuaders and manipulators use this in negotiations, networking, and even romance, offering a controlled piece of personal information to pull others closer. The key is authenticity. A fake or overly calculated secret can feel manipulative and backfire. But when it's real, even if small, sharing a secret becomes a powerful social glue, binding you to someone in a way that feels both intimate and unshakably human. Get yes streak. Getting a yes streak is a psychological technique designed to lower resistance and build momentum toward agreement by stacking small, easy affirmations before making your real request. Humans are creatures of consistency. Once we start saying yes, our brain prefers to stay in that rhythm to avoid the discomfort of breaking the pattern. By guiding someone into a series of obvious or agreeable statements, you make it psychologically easier for them to agree to something bigger. It works because each yes subtly primes the brain to view you and your ideas more positively. When someone repeatedly agrees with you, even on harmless points, they begin associating you with alignment and shared perspective. This isn't about trickery, it's about pacing the conversation so the leap to a bigger agreement doesn't feel abrupt or threatening. For example, in a sales pitch, you might start with harmless confirmations. So you want to save time, right? Yes. And you'd like things to be more efficient? Yes. By the time you reach, then this solution is exactly what you need. They've already been nodding along, making a final yes feel natural rather than forced. The key is subtlety. Your early questions must feel organic, not rehearsed. If they sense manipulation, the effect shatters instantly. But when done smoothly, the yes streak feels like a natural flow of agreement, where their final acceptance almost feels like their own idea. This is why negotiators, persuaders, and even skilled interviewers lean on it. Once someone is riding the momentum of yes, they rarely stop until you've gotten exactly what you came for. Light touch. The light touch is one of the most quietly powerful psychological triggers in human connection. A subtle, fleeting touch on the arm, shoulder, or hand can create an immediate sense of warmth, trust, and closeness, often without the other person consciously realizing why they feel more connected to you. Touch is one of the oldest forms of human communication. Long before we had language, we had physical contact to signal safety, comfort, and unity. When delivered naturally, a light touch bypasses logic and speaks directly to the emotional brain. It can lower defenses, deepen rapport, and make your presence feel more personal. In moments of tension, a gentle hand on the arm can soften hostility. In moments of joy, it can amplify the shared emotion. It works because the human nervous system interprets safe, appropriate touch as a sign of trust and belonging, releasing oxytocin, the bonding hormone that strengthens social bonds. The secret is restraint. The most effective touches are brief, light, and well-timed. Too much contact feels invasive, but a momentary touch when handing something over, greeting, or congratulating someone can plant a seed of familiarity that grows with each interaction. You'll see this instinctively used by charismatic leaders, skilled networkers, and even street performers who want to establish quick rapport. A light touch, done right, doesn't just say, "I acknowledge you." It says, "I accept you," in a way words alone cannot match. It slips past guarded minds and goes straight to the heart, leaving a trace of connection that lingers long after the moment has passed. Sit beside, not across, where you position yourself in relation to someone can quietly shape the entire tone of an interaction. Sitting beside someone instead of directly across from them transforms the dynamic from confrontation to collaboration. Across the table is the posture of negotiation, challenge, and opposition. It subtly signals we are on different sides, but when you sit beside someone, your body language says, we're in this together. This shift in perceived alliance can dissolve tension before a single word is spoken. Humans are highly sensitive to spatial cues. Across from seating often puts people into a subtle, defensive mode, as if they must guard themselves against scrutiny or argument. Side-by-side seating, on the other hand, creates a shared perspective, literally seeing the world from the same viewpoint. It removes the invisible barrier of the table edge as the line between us, and instead positions you as partners facing a mutual challenge. This technique is used masterfully in high-stakes situations, detectives interviewing witnesses, therapists building trust, or salespeople guiding a client through a proposal. Even in personal relationships, shifting to sit beside someone during a difficult conversation can melt away resistance, allowing emotions and ideas to flow more freely. The effect is amplified by subtle mirroring, leaning forward together to look at the same document, sharing a screen, or pointing to something in the same direction. Physically orienting yourself in a shoulder-to-shoulder stance sends the subconscious message, I'm not here to fight you, I'm here to work with you. This simple change in seating can turn potential conflicts into shared problem solving and turn guarded strangers into trusted allies. False deadlines. False deadlines are a psychological trigger designed to create urgency and push people into action before they're truly ready to decide. By setting a time limit that feels real, even if it's manufactured, you tap into the human fear of loss and the deep discomfort of missed opportunities. When people believe they have only a small window to act, their brain shifts into scarcity mode, focusing less on analysis and more on immediate action. This technique works because humans are terrible at resisting perceived scarcity. A deadline makes the mind race. If I don't act now, I'll lose this forever. Even the most rational person can be swayed by a ticking clock, as urgency overrides logic and triggers an instinctual need to secure what's at risk. Salespeople use this constantly. Offer ends tonight. Only 3 spots left. Sale ends in 2 hours. Because it works. In personal situations, it might sound like, if you want to join us, let me know by the end of the day. Subtly pressuring the other person to commit without giving them endless time to think, doubt, or decline. The emotional pull comes from the fear of regret. People imagine the frustration of looking back and realizing they missed their chance, and they act to avoid that feeling. While false deadlines can be manipulative, they are incredibly effective in steering decisions and speeding up outcomes. The key to success is confidence. Deliver the deadline with certainty and without hesitation. If it feels real, the other person will treat it as real, and more often than not, they'll move exactly when you want them to. Delay mirroring. Delay mirroring is a refined twist on the classic mirroring technique, and it works because it hides your intent while still creating the same subconscious bond. Instead of immediately copying someone's movements, expressions, or gestures, you wait a few moments before subtly reflecting them back. This small delay makes the mimicry feel natural, almost accidental, so the other person never suspects you're doing it deliberately. Humans are incredibly sensitive to being copied too quickly. It can feel mocking or unnerving if done wrong. But when you mirror with a pause, their brain doesn't register it as imitation. Instead, it reads it as a natural alignment of behavior. This creates the same deep sense of familiarity and rapport without triggering suspicion. The delayed approach also allows you to filter what you mirror, choosing only the most positive or open gestures to reflect. If they lean back comfortably, you follow after a short pause. If they smile, you let a few beats pass before smiling back. Even with tone of voice, Pacing your match a sentence or two later makes it feel more genuine. Psychologically, the effect is potent because it mimics the way natural rapport develops. Friends and partners unconsciously adopt each other's rhythms over time, not instantly. By recreating that pattern in a single conversation, you give the illusion that your connection is authentic and unforced. This technique is especially powerful in high-stakes settings, sales, negotiations, interviews, where you want the benefits of mirroring without the risk of being caught. The delay is what makes it invisible, and invisibility is where the true influence hides. Leave sentences hanging. Leaving sentences hanging is a subtle but intensely captivating psychological technique that draws people in by exploiting their brain's need for completion. When you start a thought but stop just before the most important or revealing part, you create a gap, a mental itch that demands to be scratched. The human mind despises unfinished patterns, just as an unresolved melody lingers in your head. An incomplete sentence compels the listener to lean in, waiting for the missing piece. This tactic works because silence after an unfinished statement feels charged. Imagine saying, "If you knew what I know about this deal," and then letting the words trail off. The pause becomes heavy, almost unbearable, pulling the listener deeper into your orbit. Their curiosity takes over, making them more invested in what you'll say next, and more receptive when you finally say it. It's also a way to shift power in conversation. By withholding the end of your thought, you control the pacing and emotional rhythm. People naturally interpret someone who's in no rush to finish as confident and in control. The listener, on the other hand, feels an urgency to prompt you, filling the silence with questions or even revealing information in an attempt to get you to continue. When used skillfully, this technique can inject mystery, build tension, and magnify the importance of your next words. It plays directly to the primal pull of curiosity, making even the most guarded person hang on your every syllable, because the mind simply cannot let go of something that feels half told. Unfinished tasks stick. Unfinished tasks have a strange grip on the human mind, refusing to fade quietly into the background. This phenomenon, known as the Zeigarnik effect, reveals that our brains are wired to hold on to incomplete actions more tightly than completed ones. An unresolved conversation, a half-read book, a project left midway, these dangle in our mental space like open loops, demanding closure. The tension of the unfinished gnaws at us, sometimes subtly, sometimes relentlessly, until we return to resolve it. This mental itch exists because the brain craves completion. When a task is left open, your mind keeps it active in working memory, rehearsing it, revisiting it, and searching for resolution. This was an evolutionary advantage. In a survival context, forgetting an unfinished hunt or unbuilt shelter could mean death. But in modern life, it can be weaponized in persuasion, marketing, and influence. Writers end chapters on cliffhangers, TV shows cut to black mid-drama, and sales pitches hint at an irresistible detail coming soon because they know your mind won't let go until the gap is filled. Even in conversation, starting a story and intentionally leaving it hanging compels the listener to lean in, waiting for the conclusion. In personal interactions, creating this kind of mental tension can deepen engagement, leaving something slightly unresolved, an unanswered question, an unfinished compliment, an intriguing "remind me to tell you later" hooks the other person's attention like an anchor. They'll carry that thread with them, consciously or not, until they can tie it off. And when they finally do, the satisfaction of closure binds them even closer to the source who granted it. Break eye contact. Breaking eye contact immediately after making an important point is a subtle psychological move that can make your words echo in someone's mind long after you've spoken them. Eye contact is one of the most intimate and high-pressure forms of human connection. When you hold it, you command focus. When you break it at the right moment, you leave the other person alone with your words, forcing them to process and feel the weight of what you've just said. The human brain craves resolution, and breaking eye contact at the peak of a statement denies it, creating a lingering tension. That tension makes your point stick. It's the conversational equivalent of dropping a stone into water and walking away while the ripples spread. Instead of diluting your message with nervous chatter or over-explanation, you let silence and absence do the work for you. This technique works especially well in persuasion, confrontation, or emotionally charged moments. If you maintain steady eye contact while delivering your thought, then look away, perhaps to your notes, the table, or into the distance. You signal confidence and control. You're not seeking their approval or reaction. You're leaving them to sit in the gravity of your words. Skilled negotiators, leaders, and speakers use this to increase impact without raising their voice or repeating themselves. The shift in focus from your eyes to their own thoughts forces introspection. It can make agreements feel inevitable, criticism feel sharper, and compliments feel deeper. Done right, breaking eye contact isn't a withdrawal. It's a deliberate invitation for your words to echo in the quiet space you leave behind. Open palms. Open palms is one of the oldest nonverbal signals of trust, honesty, and peace. Yet, it remains one of the most effective psychological cues you can use to influence how others perceive you. From ancient times, showing empty hands signaled that you carried no weapon, that you approached without threat. This primal association still lives deep in our subconscious. When we see open palms, we instinctively feel safer, more at ease, and more willing to engage. In conversation, exposing your palms subtly communicates transparency. It's as if you're wordlessly saying, "I have nothing to hide." When paired with steady eye contact and relaxed posture, this gesture can dissolve suspicion and invite trust far more quickly than words alone. Even brief moments of open palm gestures during key points in your speech can make your message feel warmer and more credible. The effect goes beyond body language. It also softens the emotional climate of an interaction. People are more receptive to requests, suggestions, and even criticism when they feel the speaker is open and non-threatening. Politicians, leaders, and skilled negotiators often use this gesture when addressing an audience to appear approachable and sincere, even when delivering hard truths. The key to using open palms effectively is authenticity. If it feels forced or exaggerated, the effect weakens. But when integrated naturally, like gesturing with open hands while making a point or resting your hands openly on a table, it sends a quiet but powerful message. I'm safe, you can trust me. And in that moment of lowered defenses, your influence can take root. Speak slower. Speaking slower is a deceptively simple yet deeply commanding psychological technique that instantly changes how people perceive you. When you deliberately slow your speech, you project confidence, authority, and control. You signal that your words carry weight, so much weight, in fact, that you don't need to rush to deliver them. The human brain instinctively associates slow, measured speech with power and certainty, while rapid speech can signal nervousness, insecurity, or desperation. Slowing down forces your listener to lean in, to savor each word, and to give you their full attention. It allows your message to land with more impact because you give the other person's mind time to process, visualize, and feel the meaning behind your words. It's not just about pacing, it's about creating space for emotional resonance. A pause before a critical point can turn a simple sentence into something unforgettable. This technique is especially potent in moments of tension or persuasion. While others rush to get their point across, you speak as though you have all the time in the world. That calm, deliberate delivery disarms urgency, making you appear unshakable. It also gives you control over the emotional tempo of the conversation. You can build suspense, emphasize importance, or draw someone in simply by controlling your rhythm. Skilled speakers, leaders, and negotiators know that speed kills authority, but slowness builds gravity. When you speak slower, you don't just deliver words, you deliver presence. You become the person who makes others stop, listen, and remember because your pace tells them one undeniable truth. What you're saying matters. Ask, how would you feel? Asking, how would you feel, is a psychological shortcut to bypassing logic and slipping straight into someone's emotional core. Instead of triggering their rational mind, which is often defensive and analytical, you invite them to step inside the experience you're describing and live it in their imagination. When people imagine an outcome, they don't just think about it, they feel it. And feelings, far more than facts, drive decisions. The human brain doesn't make a sharp distinction between vividly imagined scenarios and real ones. When you ask, how would you feel if you landed your dream job? Or how would you feel if you missed this opportunity? You're activating emotional memory, anticipation, and even physical sensations. Their pulse might quicken, their stomach might twist, or a smile might creep in, all without the event happening. This emotional rehearsal makes the future you're painting feel inevitable and real. Skilled persuaders use this technique to guide choices without directly telling people what to do. It works because feelings are harder to argue with than logic. You're not debating facts, you're letting them experience the outcome internally, which can make them more committed to pursuing or avoiding it. It also builds empathy. Asking, how would you feel if that happened to you, shifts perspective, dissolving stubbornness, and creating understanding. In negotiations, relationships, or influence, this simple phrase can reframe the entire conversation, not by forcing agreement, but by letting them emotionally step into a reality that makes the choice seem obvious. Once someone feels the truth of it, the decision almost makes itself. Shared enemy. The shared enemy technique is one of the most primal and emotionally charged ways to forge a rapid bond with someone. Humans are tribal by nature. We are hardwired to unite against common threats. When two people identify the same opponent, obstacle, or problem, they stop seeing each other as strangers and start seeing each other as allies. It creates an us versus them dynamic that can override differences, accelerate trust, and ignite loyalty almost instantly. This works because a shared enemy taps into the survival instincts buried deep in our psychology. In ancient times, survival depended on forming alliances against predators or rival tribes. Today, those instincts are just as active, but the enemy might be a competing company, an unfair system, a difficult boss, or even something abstract like bad weather or societal norms. When you position yourself beside someone facing the same foe, you shift from being an outsider to being part of their inner circle. The emotional pull is powerful. People feel safer, stronger, and more validated when they know someone else sees the world as they do. Even mild frustrations, when shared, can become glue that binds people together. A single sentence like, "I can't stand how they do that either," can trigger an instant feeling of kinship. Skilled persuaders use this carefully, not to stir unnecessary hostility, but to channel frustration into alignment. The shared enemy doesn't always have to be a person. It can be a problem, a challenge, or an injustice. What matters is the alliance it creates, because once someone sees you as fighting on their side, their defenses drop, and their willingness to trust you soars. Smile when attacked smiling. When attacked is a disarming psychological tactic that flips the emotional script in an instant. When someone comes at you with anger, criticism, or aggression, the expected response is defensiveness, escalation, or retreat. But when you respond with a calm, genuine smile, you short-circuit their emotional momentum, forcing them to recalibrate on the spot. It's an unexpected reaction that makes them question the effectiveness and even the fairness of their approach. Humans are wired to mirror emotional states. Anger often breeds anger. but smiles are neurologically contagious, triggering subtle shifts in mood and perception. When you maintain composure and smile, you're signaling that their words or actions don't rattle you, that you remain in control. This silent display of confidence can make the aggressor feel their attack has failed, stripping it of its intended power. A well-timed smile also projects superiority, not arrogance, but the quiet strength of someone who doesn't need to fight to win. In negotiations, debates, or confrontations, it can subtly shift the power dynamic in your favor. Your calmness becomes unsettling, making the attacker question whether they've misjudged the situation, underestimated you, or even overstepped. The power of this technique lies in the balance between warmth and resilience. The smile shouldn't be mocking or sarcastic. That only fuels the fire. Instead, it should be calm, steady, and confident, carrying the unspoken message, I am not shaken, and I will not play your game. In that moment, you've taken control without raising your voice, proving that composure can be the sharpest weapon of all. Clueless Act. The Clueless Act is a deceptively brilliant psychological tactic that hides sharp intention behind a mask of innocence or ignorance. By appearing less informed, less skilled, or less aware than you really are, you lower the guard of the person you're dealing with. People relax around someone they don't see as a threat. They reveal more, underestimate you, and make decisions they might not make if they realize you were fully aware of the game being played. This technique works because it flips a deep human bias, our tendency to overestimate ourselves and underestimate others. When someone believes you lack knowledge or insight, they often feel a sense of superiority, which makes them more open, more talkative, and sometimes even more reckless in what they disclose. In negotiations, this can lead them to expose weaknesses or make concessions without realizing you're quietly taking notes. The power of the Clueless Act isn't in pretending to be foolish, it's in strategically underplaying your hand. Maybe you ask seemingly innocent questions that encourage the other person to explain too much. Maybe you act as though you don't understand a process, prompting them to walk you through it step by step, giving you a roadmap to their thinking. Used skillfully, the act allows you to collect information, observe patterns, and choose the exact moment to reveal your true insight. That reveal can be devastating, a sudden shift from harmless novice to decisive expert. In that moment, the person you've been dealing with realizes too late that they've been playing with someone who was never actually in the dark at all. Admit flaws first. Admitting your flaws before someone else points them out is a psychological jolt that flips the power dynamic in your favor. Most people instinctively hide their weaknesses, fearing judgment or rejection. But when you openly reveal them yourself, you strip away the other person's leverage and replace suspicion with trust. Instead of seeing you as defensive or guarded, they see you as confident, self-aware, and, most importantly, honest. This works because vulnerability, when paired with competence, makes you more likable and relatable. Psychologists call this the pratfall effect. A capable person who admits to small imperfections becomes more human and therefore more appealing. It's why a leader who says, I got this wrong last time, here's what I learned, often earns more respect than one who insists on being flawless. The admission softens the ego-driven barriers that often block connection. The act also rewires the flow of conversation. Instead of waiting for criticism, you preempt it. If you admit, I'm not the fastest at this, but I'll get it right, you remove the sting from anyone else saying it, and instead frame the narrative in your own words. This transforms perceived weakness into authenticity, and authenticity builds trust faster than perfection ever could. The key is balance. You reveal enough to seem real, but not so much that you undermine credibility. Done well, this tactic disarms skeptics, quiets critics, and pulls people closer. By leading with humility, you don't just lower defenses, you turn them into bridges for deeper influence. Wrong name test. The wrong name test is a subtle psychological tactic used to gauge someone's engagement, memory, and attitude toward you without asking directly. By intentionally calling someone by the wrong name or slightly altering it, you trigger an immediate subconscious reaction. If they correct you instantly, it signals attentiveness, personal pride, and perhaps a desire to establish boundaries. If they let it slide, it may reveal discomfort, hesitation, or even a desire to avoid confrontation. This technique works because names are deeply tied to identity. Hearing your name sparks an immediate neurological response. It's one of the most personal sounds in existence. When that sound is wrong, the brain snaps to attention. It's a tiny violation of identity that demands an internal decision: correct the mistake or ignore it. That choice can reveal more about someone's personality, mood, or intentions than hours of small talk. In social or negotiation settings, the wrong name test can be revealing. A quick correction delivered warmly often indicates confidence and openness. An uncomfortable laugh or silence may suggest insecurity or an unwillingness to challenge. In Persuasion, knowing how assertive or passive someone is can help you adjust your approach to either lead more strongly or build more trust. The emotional impact is subtle but real. People who do correct you may feel a stronger need to prove themselves afterward, while those who don't might feel slightly unsettled, both states that can shift the balance of a conversation. When used carefully, the wrong name test is less about deception and more about unlocking unspoken truths hidden in the smallest human reactions. Freebie gift. The freebie gift is a deceptively powerful psychological trigger rooted in the ancient law of reciprocity, the unspoken rule that when someone gives us something, we feel compelled to give something back. This isn't just cultural conditioning, it's hardwired into human survival. For thousands of years, generosity built alliances and secured mutual aid, so our brains evolved to treat it as a social debt that must be repaid. When you offer a free gift, whether it's a tangible item, valuable information, or even unexpected help, you instantly shift the dynamic of the relationship. The recipient feels a subtle pressure, often without realizing it, to return the favor. That repayment could be as small as offering gratitude or as significant as agreeing to your request later on. The beauty of this technique is that it works even when the gift is modest. If it's thoughtful or unexpected, it creates an emotional imprint that lingers. Marketers, salespeople, and negotiators use this constantly. A free sample at a store doesn't just introduce a product, it creates a quiet sense of obligation. A consultant offering free insights during a meeting makes it harder for the client to walk away without reciprocating. Even in personal relationships, a well-timed gesture of generosity can plant a seed of loyalty and goodwill. The key is authenticity. If the freebie feels manipulative, it can backfire. But when delivered with genuine intent, it bypasses suspicion, softens resistance, and makes the recipient far more open to future influence. It's not just a gift, it's an invisible tether gently pulling them back towards you. Make ideas theirs. Making ideas theirs is a subtle yet incredibly effective psychological technique that turns your goals into their decisions. Instead of pushing your idea directly, you plant it in a way that lets the other person feel like they discovered it themselves. This taps into a powerful truth. People defend and commit to their own ideas far more fiercely than those imposed on them. When they believe it came from their mind, their ego, pride, and identity become tied to it, and resistance melts away. The magic lies in gentle suggestion and guided thinking. You might ask leading questions, present partial information, or describe a scenario in a way that nudges their mind toward your conclusion. When they finally voice the solution, you affirm it as brilliant, letting them take ownership. The psychological reward of being right makes them emotionally invested in seeing it succeed. This works because humans crave autonomy. We want to feel in control of our choices, not pressured or manipulated. By shaping the path without dictating the destination, you create a powerful illusion of independence. It's the same principle great negotiators use when they lead someone to a decision by asking questions instead of making statements, and the same trick expert leaders use when they empower a team to choose the course of action they secretly favored all along. When done well, making ideas theirs not only gets people to agree, it makes them fight for your vision as if it were their own. They'll take pride in it, protect it, and push it forward, never realizing you were the one who put it in their mind in the first place. Speak in past tense. Speaking in past tense about something you want to happen is a psychological trick that makes the desired outcome feel like it's already a done deal. When you describe a goal, decision, or agreement as if it has already happened, you bypass the mind's uncertainty and plant it directly into the listener's subconscious as a completed reality. The brain struggles to distinguish between vividly imagined events and real ones, so hearing something in past tense can make it feel more certain, more natural, and harder to reject. This technique works because it reframes possibility as inevitability. Instead of saying, "If we work together, we could achieve great results," you might say, "When we worked together, the results were incredible." That subtle shift bypasses hesitation and makes the listener's mind start filling in the blanks. If it already happened, how did it feel? What did I gain? They unconsciously step into a future where the decision is behind them and the benefits are already theirs. It's often used in sales, persuasion, and leadership to dissolve doubt. Politicians frame their vision as history. Advertisers use phrases like, "You've already experienced the comfort," to make you feel ownership before buying. Even in personal conversations, saying, "It was amazing when we finally took that trip," can nudge someone toward making it real. The real power is in its subtlety. It doesn't sound like pressure. It sounds like storytelling. But in reality, you're bending perception so the mind treats your idea as something that's already part of the past, and people are far more likely to align with what they believe has already happened. Delay good news. Delaying good news is a psychological tactic that amplifies anticipation and makes the eventual reveal far more impactful. Human brains are wired to savor the buildup before a reward, sometimes even more than the reward itself. By holding back the positive information for just a little longer, you intensify curiosity, emotional investment, and the sense of value attached to what you're about to share. When you hint that you have something exciting to tell someone, but don't reveal it immediately, their mind starts racing with possibilities. This suspense activates the brain's dopamine system, which fuels motivation and heightens emotional sensitivity. The longer they wait, within reason, the more they mentally inflate the importance of the news. This makes the moment you finally share it feel bigger, more memorable, and more rewarding. In personal relationships, delaying good news can deepen emotional connection. It turns the moment into a shared experience, one they'll likely replay in their mind later. In negotiations or business, it can be used to keep people engaged, to ensure they stay invested in the conversation until the very end. Even in public speaking, saving a positive announcement for last can leave a lasting impression. The emotional hook comes from contrast. The wait builds tension. The reveal releases it in a rush of relief and pleasure. But the timing is key. Wait too long and frustration replaces excitement. Too short and you lose the power of anticipation. When executed well, delaying good news transforms something simple into something unforgettable, etching the moment into the other person's memory with far more force than if you'd blurted it out immediately. Match breathing. Matching breathing is one of the most intimate and quietly powerful psychological techniques for creating connection, trust, and influence. When you subtly align your breathing pattern with another person's, you tap into a primal sense of harmony, one so deep the other person rarely notices consciously, yet feels instinctively. Breathing is directly tied to emotion. When two people breathe in sync, their bodies begin to mirror each other's state, creating a shared rhythm that fosters comfort and rapport. This works because our subconscious associates synchronized breathing with closeness and safety. Think about a mother holding her baby, lovers lying together, or teammates celebrating a victory. Breathing naturally aligns in moments of connection. By deliberately matching someone's inhale and exhale timing, you're sending the silent signal, "We are the same, you can trust me." The effect is especially potent in tense situations. If someone is anxious, their breathing is quick and shallow, matching their rhythm at first, then slowly guiding it to a calmer pace can gently pull them out of stress without a single word. In moments of excitement, aligning with their faster breathing heightens the shared energy and deepens the bond. This technique can be used in negotiations, therapy, sales, or personal relationships to quietly shift emotional states. The key is subtlety. Forcing the match will be noticeable and break the flow. Instead, tune in, let your own breath naturally fall into their rhythm, and hold it there. Before long, their body will begin responding to yours, and you'll find yourself leading the emotional tempo without them even realizing it. Use because. Using the word because is one of the simplest yet most powerful psychological triggers for compliance. It works because our brains are wired to respond to reasons, even weak ones. When you say because, you signal that there is a cause, a justification, and a logical chain behind your request, and people instinctively become more willing to agree. The word itself acts as a mental shortcut, bypassing deep scrutiny and triggering automatic cooperation. This effect was famously demonstrated in studies where people were more likely to let someone cut in line if they simply added because followed by any reason at all, even if it was meaningless, like because I need to make some copies. Our brains crave explanations, and once they hear that magic word, they tend to accept what follows without weighing it as critically. The power of because lies in how it frames your request as inevitable or necessary. Saying, "I need your help because this has to be finished by tonight," feels far more urgent and justified than simply saying, "I need your help." Even when the reason isn't strong, the structure itself makes the request sound more reasonable and harder to decline. This technique works in sales, persuasion, and everyday influence because it speaks to a deep psychological bias. People don't just want to know what you want, they want to know why. By giving them that why, you make it easier for them to say yes, often without realizing they've been nudged. It's a single word, but in the right place, it can be the difference between rejection and compliance. Sit at an angle. Sitting at an angle is a subtle yet powerful psychological tactic that changes how safe, open, and cooperative someone feels around you. When you position yourself slightly off-center instead of directly facing them, you remove the invisible opponent signal that comes with head-on confrontation. Face-to-face posture can feel like a challenge. It activates the subconscious sense of scrutiny, as if you're being judged, interrogated, or prepared for conflict. But sitting at an angle communicates something entirely different. I'm not here to fight you, I'm here to connect. This works because humans read body orientation as intent. Predators face prey head-on, while allies naturally stand or sit side by side, facing a shared direction. By adopting an angled position, whether in a chair, at a cafe, or during a tough conversation, you subtly shift the mood from defensive to collaborative. The other person's body relaxes, their voice softens, and their willingness to share increases. This positioning is especially powerful in sensitive or high-stakes moments. A therapist may place their chair at a diagonal to a client, a detective might interview a witness from the side, and a negotiator might angle themselves toward shared documents rather than staring down the other party. The physical layout says, "We're working on this together," rather than "we're against each other." It also opens the door for natural mirroring, leaning forward to point something out, shifting to match their posture, which deepens rapport. In a world where subtle tension can kill connection, simply adjusting your angle can dissolve resistance and make someone feel you're an ally standing with them, not an opponent staring them down. Insider compliment. An insider compliment is more than just praise. It's recognition that feels personal, specific, and reserved for only those who truly get the other person. Unlike generic flattery, which often slides off without impact, an insider compliment dives beneath the surface, acknowledging qualities, efforts, or details that most people overlook. This type of praise feels exclusive, almost secret, because it taps into something the recipient doesn't hear every day. Humans crave to be seen for who they really are, not just for what they present to the world. When you highlight something unique, perhaps a subtle skill, a behind-the-scenes effort, or an unspoken strength, you trigger a deep emotional response. It's as if you're saying, I notice the things others miss, and I value them. This can create an immediate bond as the person feels not only appreciated, but truly understood. The power of the insider compliment lies in its authenticity and precision. It might sound like, you have a way of making complicated things sound simple, or most people don't realize how much work you put into this, but I do. These statements carry more weight because they imply insider knowledge, the sense that you're part of a smaller, more perceptive group that sees their hidden worth. This technique works beautifully in building trust, deepening connections, and influencing people because it bypasses the ego's defenses. A vague compliment might be brushed off, but an insider compliment lodges in their mind, replaying itself long after the conversation ends. It's not just praise, it's proof that you really see them, and that can make them feel loyal, open, and drawn to you almost instantly. Ask them to explain value. Asking someone to explain the value of something they care about is a subtle yet deeply persuasive psychological tactic that shifts the emotional weight of the conversation onto them. When a person starts articulating why something matters, they're not just telling you, they're reinforcing that belief in their own mind. The act of explaining forces them to dig deeper into their emotions, justify their position, and ultimately strengthen their commitment to it. This works because humans are more likely to protect and act on ideas they verbalize themselves. If you simply tell someone the value of something, they can debate or dismiss it. But when they're the one building the case, their brain treats it as self-generated truth, which is far harder to argue against internally. The more passionately they explain, the more emotionally invested they become, and that investment creates a psychological anchor. For example, if you're negotiating and you ask, why do you think this approach is the best fit for your needs? They'll begin selling themselves on it as they answer. In relationships, asking, why is this important to you, not only deepens your understanding, but also strengthens their attachment to the point they're making. The beauty of this technique is that it makes you seem curious and respectful while subtly steering them toward reinforcing the exact belief or decision you want them to hold. It's influence without confrontation, because once they've explained the value, it's no longer just your idea they're defending. It's theirs, and people rarely walk away from something they've convinced themselves of. Ask after laughter. Asking after laughter is a deceptively effective psychological technique that uses the emotional high of humor to open the door for agreement or honesty. When someone laughs, their guard drops. In that moment, their brain releases endorphins and relaxes its natural defenses, making them more open, more trusting, and far less critical. Laughter is a shared emotional experience. It creates connection, dissolves tension, and shifts people into a state where they're more likely to say yes or reveal something personal. The key is timing. You wait until the laughter is fading, but the warmth still lingers. That's when you slip in your question, request, or suggestion. Because the other person is still emotionally elevated, they're far more receptive and less likely to overanalyze. For example, after sharing a funny story and getting them to laugh, you might casually say, "So, how about we try it my way?" Or, "By the way, what's really going on with that?" Light, easy mood carries over, making the transition feel natural instead of calculated. This works because laughter builds rapport at lightning speed. It creates a subconscious sense of "we're on the same side," which makes the listener want to cooperate. It's also disarming. People are less guarded about giving information or agreeing when they feel safe and connected. Skilled negotiators, interviewers, and even interrogators know that after laughter, people are at their most human. They're less rigid, less cautious, and more likely to share or commit. Used wisely, asking after laughter turns humor from a fleeting moment into a powerful bridge for influence. Hero story. Telling a hero story is a psychological technique that pulls people into an emotional journey where they can't help but see themselves or you in a powerful, inspiring light. Humans are hardwired for storytelling. Our brains light up when we hear narratives, especially ones where the main character overcomes struggle and transforms. The hero's journey taps into an ancient structure of hope, resilience, and triumph that triggers deep emotional resonance, often bypassing skepticism entirely. A hero story isn't about bragging, it's about vulnerability, challenge, and ultimate victory. When you share a struggle you faced, the obstacles that stood in your way, and the turning point that led to success, you create a mental and emotional map for your listener. They don't just hear your words, they feel the journey. They imagine themselves in the same fight, experiencing the fear, the persistence, and the relief of finally winning. This works because people don't bond with perfection. They bond with authenticity. A flawless figure is distant, but a hero who bleeds before they triumph is relatable. It builds trust and admiration, making the listener far more receptive to your message or request. In Persuasion, a well-told hero story can inspire action without overtly telling someone what to do. It lets them draw their own conclusion while you guide the emotional current. Leaders, salespeople, and activists use hero stories to ignite belief and loyalty. The right narrative can transform you from a stranger into a trusted guide in minutes. And when your story mirrors the challenges your audience faces, it becomes more than entertainment. It becomes a call to action. They feel compelled to answer. Small favor. First, asking for a small favor first is a psychological technique that quietly sets the stage for bigger requests later. Known as the foot in the door effect, it works because once someone agrees to help you in a small way, they are far more likely to say yes to something larger. This happens because humans crave consistency. Once they see themselves as the kind of person who helps you, they subconsciously want to maintain that self-image. The brilliance of this method lies in its low resistance. A small favor feels harmless and easy to agree to, so there's little reason to refuse. It could be as simple as, "Can you hold this for a second?" Or, "Could you review this quick note?" That initial yes is more than just assistance. It's a micro commitment that begins weaving a thread of cooperation between you. Once that thread exists, it's much harder for people to break it without feeling guilty or inconsistent. When you later ask for a bigger favor, their brain remembers that they've already helped you before, and helping again feels natural. This is why skilled negotiators, salespeople, and influencers rarely open with their biggest ask. They build momentum through small wins. The emotional hook comes from the sense of trust and reciprocity this creates. People like to feel they're helpful, and once they've invested, even in the smallest way, they feel subtly connected to your outcome. This connection makes them more receptive to your influence, not because you forced them, but because you allowed them to choose, step by step, until they're already halfway to saying yes before you've even asked. Social proof. Social proof is one of the most persuasive forces in human psychology because it taps into a primal instinct. When uncertain, we look to others to decide what's right, safe, or valuable. It's the reason people flock to busy restaurants, buy products with glowing reviews, and feel more confident in their choices when they know others have already made the same one. Deep down, our survival once depended on following the group. Straying alone meant danger, so our brains are still wired to equate popularity with safety and correctness. When you leverage social proof, you're essentially saying, "You're not the first. Others have already tried this, approved it, and benefited from it." This reassurance bypasses skepticism by replacing it with the comfort of collective validation. In sales, phrases like, "Most of our clients choose this package," instantly lower decision-making anxiety. In persuasion, mentioning that people in your position often take this route makes the choice feel normal, even expected. The effect is strongest when the others being referenced feel relatable to the listener. A CEO cares what other CEOs are doing. A first-time buyer cares what other first-time buyers decided. By aligning your example group with the person you're speaking to, you make the proof feel personal and trustworthy. Social proof also thrives in visibility. Testimonials, crowds, statistics, or even simply name-dropping credible supporters all work because they replace abstract claims with tangible evidence of acceptance. And once people believe the majority is leaning a certain way, resisting it feels like swimming upstream. Possible, but far less likely. That's why this technique doesn't just persuade, it pulls. Be mysterious. Being mysterious is a psychological technique that draws people toward you by creating a sense of intrigue and unanswered questions. Humans are irresistibly drawn to what they don't fully understand. The mind craves closure, and when it doesn't get it, it keeps returning to the source. By revealing less, holding certain details back, or letting others see only glimpses of who you are, you create a magnetic pull that keeps them guessing and wanting more. The power of mystery lies in scarcity. Information about you becomes rare and therefore valuable. When you don't overshare, every small detail you do reveal feels significant, and people lean in, searching for clues. They start filling in the blanks themselves, often imagining things about you that are more flattering or fascinating than reality. This isn't deception. It's the art of letting curiosity work in your favor. Mystery also builds anticipation. If you answer every question fully and immediately, there's nothing to chase. But if you give just enough to spark interest, pausing before finishing a thought, dropping hints without full explanations, you create a mental itch that people can't ignore. They begin to invest time, energy, and emotion into figuring you out, which strengthens their attachment to you. Charismatic leaders, seducers, and storytellers all use mystery as a hook. They know that too much exposure dulls allure, but controlled revelation keeps fascination alive. Being mysterious isn't about being distant. It's about understanding that in a world drowning in noise, silence and selective sharing can make you unforgettable. People don't chase what they already have. They chase what they can't quite grasp. Slow handshake. A slow handshake is a subtle yet striking psychological move that can change the tone of an interaction before a single word is spoken. While most handshakes are rushed, transactional, and forgettable, a handshake that is just a touch slower, steady, warm, and deliberate creates an instant sense of presence and connection. It signals confidence without aggression, friendliness without desperation, and attention without distraction. Humans make snap judgments in seconds, and touch is one of the most primal forms of communication. A rushed handshake can make you seem nervous or disengaged, while an overly firm or prolonged one can feel domineering. The slow handshake finds the perfect middle ground. It communicates, "I'm here with you, and I'm not in a hurry to move on." This makes the other person feel valued and respected, often triggering a subconscious sense of trust. The effect works because of pacing. People instinctively mirror the energy they're given, so when you slow the interaction, they slow down too, matching your calm, grounded presence. This pause in the rapid rhythm of social exchanges makes you stand out, breaking the autopilot pattern of quick greetings. Skilled networkers, leaders, and negotiators use this to leave a lasting first impression. A handshake that lingers just long enough to register warmth, paired with steady eye contact and a genuine smile, can set the tone for the entire relationship. Done right, it doesn't feel like a tactic. It feels like sincerity. But beneath the surface, it's quietly telling the other person, "You matter enough for me to slow the world down for this moment." Talk less. Talking less is one of the most counterintuitive yet powerful ways to command respect and influence others. In a world where people often equate speaking with control, the person who speaks sparingly stands out as confident, self-assured, and worth listening to. Every word you choose to share gains more weight because it isn't buried under a flood of chatter. Silence, when owned, becomes a statement in itself, one that can unsettle, intrigue, and captivate. Humans are naturally uncomfortable with empty space in conversation, which is why those who resist the urge to fill it often hold the upper hand. Speaking less forces others to lean in, to work harder to draw you out, and to pay closer attention to what you do say. It flips the dynamic. Suddenly, they're chasing your words instead of you chasing theirs. The psychological pull of talking less comes from scarcity. Just like a rare gem, your words feel more valuable when they're not given freely. This scarcity can make people perceive you as more thoughtful, intelligent, and in control, even if you've said very little. It also allows you to listen more deeply, catching nuances and opportunities others miss while they're busy talking. In negotiations, persuasion, and even personal relationships, restraint can shift the balance of power. Those who talk less don't just avoid revealing too much. They create an air of mystery and authority. People remember the one thing you said because you didn't drown it in 10 more sentences. By choosing silence over filler, you let curiosity and respect do the work for you. Lower emotions. Lowering emotions is a powerful psychological technique that works by regulating your own energy to subtly influence and calm the emotional state of others. When someone is angry, anxious, or overly excited, most people instinctively match that intensity, escalating the situation without meaning to. But by intentionally lowering your emotional tone, slowing your speech, relaxing your posture, softening your voice, you create a steady emotional anchor that invites them to meet you at your level. Humans are emotional mirrors. Our nervous systems are wired to pick up on and reflect the moods of people around us, a phenomenon known as emotional contagion. When you remain calm in the face of heightened emotion, you disrupt the cycle, making it harder for the other person to sustain their intensity. This is why skilled negotiators, therapists, and crisis communicators rarely raise their voice. They let their composure do the work. The beauty of this technique is that it doesn't require words to shift the atmosphere. Simply leaning back in your chair, pausing before you speak, and breathing slowly signals safety and control. The person across from you begins to unconsciously regulate themselves to match your state, easing tension without a direct confrontation. This approach is especially effective in high-stakes or conflict-heavy situations. Instead of trying to force someone to calm down, which often makes them dig in deeper, you become the emotional thermostat, setting the temperature through your own demeanor. And once the heat is gone, people think more clearly, listen more openly, and are far more likely to move toward resolution on your terms. Vulnerability. Vulnerability is one of the most counterintuitive yet deeply persuasive psychological tools you can use. In a world where most people wear masks of confidence, control, and perfection, showing a glimpse of your flaws, fears, or failures can create a profound human connection. It works because it strips away the facade and reveals something raw and real, something the other person instinctively recognizes in themselves. When you show vulnerability, you're silently saying, "I trust you enough to show you the parts I usually hide." This triggers a powerful emotional response. Humans are wired to respond to authenticity. When we sense it, we lower our own guard. Vulnerability creates intimacy in minutes where small talk might take years. It makes you relatable, approachable, and trustworthy because perfection feels alien, but imperfection feels human. The key is balance. Vulnerability isn't oversharing or dumping your problems on someone. It's revealing just enough to make a genuine connection while still holding your ground. It might be admitting a personal struggle in a job interview to show growth, sharing a moment of doubt in a negotiation to invite empathy, or confessing a past mistake to make your advice more credible. When used intentionally, vulnerability becomes a bridge, not a weakness. It invites reciprocity, prompting the other person to open up in return. Leaders use it to inspire loyalty, negotiators use it to soften resistance, and partners use it to deepen intimacy. In a guarded world, those willing to show their humanity hold an undeniable advantage because nothing disarms suspicion faster than the truth, especially when it's the truth we're not used to hearing. What would it take? Asking, "What would it take?" is a deceptively powerful psychological question that transforms resistance into possibility. Instead of hitting a wall with a yes or no demand, you invite the other person into problem-solving mode. You're not asking if something can be done, you're asking how it can be done. This simple shift reframes the conversation from rejection to collaboration, forcing the mind to search for solutions instead of excuses. Humans are wired to respond to challenges with curiosity when the challenge feels achievable. By asking, "What would it take to make this work?" you bypass defensive barriers and position yourself alongside them, not against them. It subtly says, "I'm not here to argue, I'm here to find a way forward with you." And once they start answering, they're no longer fighting the idea, they're actively building the path toward it. The beauty of this question is how it seeds commitment. When someone describes what it would take, they're also imagining the steps to get there. This mental rehearsal makes the idea feel more real, and the person often starts convincing themselves. It shifts the emotional tone from "I can't" to "maybe I can," and that's where influence begins. Salespeople use it to turn no into yes. Negotiators use it to bridge impossible gaps. Leaders use it to inspire action. Even in personal relationships, it can dissolve stalemates. The magic lies in the fact that you're not forcing agreement. You're opening a door in their mind, and once they step through, they're walking toward your outcome on their own. Reframe problem. Reframing. A problem is the art of changing the way someone sees a situation so that it shifts from an obstacle into an opportunity, or from something threatening into something manageable. The power of this technique lies in the fact that human perception is not fixed. The way we interpret events matters far more than the events themselves. By altering the frame through which someone views the problem, you can completely transform their emotional response, decision-making, and willingness to act. Our brains are wired to follow the narrative we're given. If a situation is framed as a loss, people tend to avoid risk. If it's framed as a gain, they become more open and optimistic. For example, telling someone, "We have a 70% success rate," feels vastly different from "there's a 30% failure rate," even though both are mathematically identical. This isn't logic, it's psychology, and it can be leveraged to guide behavior. When you reframe, you don't change the facts, you change the meaning of those facts. In persuasion, this can turn a disadvantage into a selling point. A small company becomes more agile, an expensive product becomes an investment, and a setback becomes a learning opportunity. This mental shift not only reduces resistance, but can also inspire action where there was hesitation. The emotional power of reframing is profound because it offers hope, clarity, or empowerment where there was frustration or fear. People feel lighter when their perspective shifts toward possibility, and they'll often attribute that feeling to you, the one who showed them a better way to see. In that moment, you're not just solving problems, you're rewriting reality. Offer help first. Offering help first is a subtle, yet incredibly effective psychological strategy because it flips the usual dynamic of asking before giving. When you step forward with assistance, without conditions or immediate expectations, you bypass skepticism and plant a seed of trust in the other person's mind. Humans are wired to respond positively to generosity. It signals safety, alliance, and goodwill. On a subconscious level, it also triggers the law of reciprocity, making people far more likely to support you in return. The power of this technique lies in how it positions you. By helping first, you present yourself as a resource, not a taker. This lowers defenses and makes your presence feel like an asset rather than a burden. In business, it could be sharing valuable insight before pitching a service. In personal relationships, it might mean stepping in to solve a small problem before asking for anything in return. Even something as simple as offering advice, introductions, or tools can set the stage for deeper influence. What makes offering help so potent is the emotional weight it carries. People remember those who made their lives easier without being prompted. It creates a subtle but lasting debt, one they often repay willingly, sometimes even more generously than the original favor. The key is authenticity. If your offer feels transactional or insincere, the effect vanishes. But when it's real, it builds a foundation of goodwill that can make future asks feel natural, even welcome. You're not just asking for cooperation later, you're earning it before the conversation even starts. Anchor pricing. Anchor pricing is a psychological technique that shapes how people perceive value by presenting a high reference point first, making everything after it seem more reasonable. Our brains are not great at judging absolute value. We rely on comparisons. When you set the anchor high, you influence the mental framework through which all following prices are evaluated. What once seemed expensive suddenly feels like a bargain simply because it's cheaper than the first number you saw. This works because of a mental shortcut called the anchoring effect. The first figure we encounter in a decision process sticks in our mind, even if it's arbitrary, and everything else is judged relative to it. For example, if you first show someone a product that costs $2,000 and then show them a similar one for $800, the second one feels like a steal, even if $800 is still more than they plan to spend. Skilled salespeople, negotiators, and marketers use this constantly. Luxury brands display their most expensive items first. Real estate agents show a high-priced property before the affordable one. Even in salary negotiations, mentioning a high number early can shift the entire discussion upward. The brilliance of anchor pricing is that it doesn't just change perception, it changes behavior. People feel like they're getting a deal, so they're more likely to commit. Without that initial anchor, the same price might have been rejected instantly. By setting the reference point in your favor, you quietly tilt the entire decision-making process, making your desired outcome feel not just reasonable, but irresistible. Turn negatives positive. Turning negatives into positives is a psychological skill that can completely reshape how people perceive a situation, a person, or even themselves. At its core, it's the art of reframing, taking something that seems like a weakness, mistake, or drawback and presenting it in a way that reveals hidden value. This works because perception is fluid. The brain doesn't respond to raw facts nearly as much as it responds to the meaning we attach to them. Change the meaning, and you change the emotional reaction. When you reframe, you take control of the narrative. A flaw becomes a sign of authenticity. A failure becomes proof of resilience. A delay becomes evidence of thoroughness. This doesn't mean lying. It means guiding focus toward the benefit hidden inside the setback. For example, saying, yes, it took longer than planned, but that extra time ensured it was flawless, shifts the listener's emotions from frustration to appreciation. This technique works so well because it aligns with how people want to feel. No one enjoys holding on to negative emotions. When you offer them a new, more empowering perspective, they are often eager to accept it. Psychologically, it relieves cognitive dissonance, the discomfort of holding on to a bad feeling, by giving the mind a satisfying resolution. Skilled communicators, leaders, and negotiators use reframing to diffuse tension, maintain morale, and keep people aligned with their vision. In personal life, it can turn conflict into connection, and in persuasion, it can turn resistance into agreement. When done well, turning a negative into a positive doesn't just change someone's mind, it changes the story they tell themselves. Special exception. Giving someone a special exception is a psychological strategy that makes them feel valued, chosen, and uniquely important. When you bend a rule, extend a privilege, or offer access that others don't get, you're sending a powerful, unspoken message. You're not just anyone, you're special. This taps directly into the human craving for status and belonging, making the recipient more loyal, cooperative, and emotionally invested in you. The effect works because humans are hardwired to respond to perceived exclusivity. From VIP passes to insider deals, the idea that not everyone gets, this creates both gratitude and attachment. When someone believes you've made an exception just for them, they feel indebted, not only to return the favor, but to maintain the relationship that granted them this rare treatment in the first place. The beauty of the special exception is that it doesn't have to be huge to have impact. It could be letting someone skip a process, sharing inside information, or giving them early access to something valuable. The key is to make it feel personal, like you're breaking from the norm because you trust or admire them specifically. This technique also builds emotional leverage. People often defend and support those who've granted them special treatment, even in situations where they otherwise might object. The psychological bond created through a perceived favor is strong enough to influence future decisions in your favor. When done with sincerity, a special exception makes people feel privileged and seen, and in that emotional high of feeling chosen, they'll often go out of their way to protect, help, and align with you because you made them feel like they truly matter. Future pacing. Future pacing is a psychological technique that pulls someone's mind forward in time, getting them to vividly imagine the outcome you want them to accept. By guiding their thoughts into a detailed mental picture of a future where your idea, product, or solution has already worked, you bypass logical resistance and tap directly into emotion. The brain struggles to distinguish between a vividly imagined event and a real one. So when someone mentally experiences success in advance, they become far more likely to pursue it in reality. This works because visualization activates the same neural pathways as actual experience. When you say, imagine 6 months from now, waking up stress-free because this problem is gone, you're helping them feel the relief now, in the present moment. That emotional preview makes the desired outcome feel tangible and inevitable, and people are naturally drawn toward what feels certain and rewarding. Future pacing also shifts perspective from the risk of action to the reward of completion. Instead of focusing on doubts, their mind starts reinforcing the belief that the solution is already part of their life. In sales, it turns hesitation into excitement. In leadership, it transforms resistance into shared vision. In personal influence, it strengthens bonds by painting a future you both look forward to. The key is specificity. The more sensory details, what they'll see, hear, and feel, the stronger the emotional pull. You're not just asking them to agree, you're letting them experience the win ahead of time. And once they've lived that future in their mind, walking away from it feels like losing something they've already had. Pause after proposal. Pausing after a proposal is a deceptively simple yet incredibly potent psychological move that can shift the balance of power in any conversation. The moment you make your offer, suggestion, or demand, your instinct might be to keep talking, filling the air with justifications, sweeteners, or explanations. But when you stop and let silence hang, you place the full weight of your words directly in the other person's lap. That pause becomes pressure, and pressure demands resolution. Humans are deeply uncomfortable with silence in high-stakes moments. After you've made your proposal, every passing second feels heavier to them than it does to you. Their mind races to break the tension, often by responding faster than they intended, agreeing, making concessions, or revealing key information just to end the quiet. The pause also signals confidence. It says, without words, I've made my point. I don't need to chase you. The ball is in your court. People respect and respond to certainty. By refusing to rush in and save them from the silence, you subtly position yourself as the one in control. This technique is used masterfully in negotiations, sales, and even personal relationships. A job candidate might state their desired salary and then go still, forcing the employer to grapple with it. A salesperson might name a price and simply wait, letting the customer's imagination work against their resistance. In the quiet, your words echo louder, and the other person often moves toward you, not because you pushed harder, but because you left space for the weight of your offer to sink in. Hint: competition. Hinting at competition is a psychological trigger that taps into the primal human fear of losing out to someone else. When people believe that others are interested in the same thing they want, whether it's a job, a product, an opportunity, or even a person, the perceived value of that thing skyrockets. This is the scarcity effect fused with social proof. Not only is it limited, but others are actively trying to claim it, which creates urgency and desire all at once. Our ancestors survived in environments where resources were often scarce and contested. If others were chasing after something, it usually meant it was worth having. That same instinct still drives us today. Seeing someone else reach for what we want sparks a deep, almost automatic urge to act before we lose our chance. The beauty of this tactic is that it doesn't require outright statements. You can drop subtle hints. I have a few other people interested, or we've had several inquiries already. Even casual mentions of others being in the picture shift the listener's mindset from, do I want this, to, I'd better decide before someone else takes it. Marketers, salespeople, and negotiators use this to accelerate decisions and push hesitant people over the line. In personal situations, it can spark interest where there was none, simply by signaling that others see the value too. The key is balance. Overplay it and it feels manipulative, but drop it with just the right amount of intrigue, and you'll find that nothing motivates action faster than the quiet whisper of looming competition. Ask at high point. Asking at a high point is a timing technique that harnesses the peak of someone's positive emotions to dramatically increase the chances of getting a yes. Humans make decisions emotionally first and logically second, and when someone is riding the wave of excitement, pride, or relief, their brain is flooded with feel-good chemicals that make them more open, agreeable, and generous. If you time your request to land in that emotional sweet spot, resistance melts away. This works because positive emotional states expand perception. In moments of joy or victory, people feel more capable, optimistic, and willing to take risks. A friend who's just been congratulated, a client thrilled with your results, or a partner laughing at a shared moment is far more likely to agree than if you asked during stress or neutrality. Their mental guard is down, and their desire to maintain the good feeling makes them more receptive. The key is reading emotional cues. Watch for smiles, laughter, relaxed posture, or animated speech, signals that they're in a heightened emotional state. Slip your request in naturally without breaking the mood. It might sound like, by the way, since you're in such a good mood, I have something to ask, or even more subtly, just segueing into your pitch while the positive energy is still peaking. Skilled influencers and negotiators know this isn't manipulation. It's alignment. You're matching your ask to their best emotional moment, giving it the greatest chance to land without friction. When timed perfectly, it feels less like a request and more like a natural continuation of their high, making agreement almost effortless. Contrast options. Contrast options is a psychological technique that shapes decisions by controlling the reference points people use to judge value. Human perception is rarely absolute. We evaluate things in relation to what we've just seen. By presenting one option next to another that's intentionally less appealing, you make the desired choice seem far more attractive, even if it wouldn't stand out on its own. This works because the brain takes shortcuts when comparing. If you show someone a high-priced, overstuffed package, first, a slightly less expensive option feels like a bargain, even if it's still costly. If you start with something bare and unappealing, your main offer feels like a massive upgrade. The comparison shifts their focus from, do I want this at all? To, which one of these do I want? That subtle framing makes rejection less likely. Marketers use it constantly. A luxury model makes the mid-range model look affordable, while a stripped-down starter makes the standard seem worth the extra. In personal influence, contrasting options can make your preferred suggestion feel like the middle ground, the safe or reasonable choice. The key is intentional sequencing. You don't just offer choices, you arrange them so that one naturally elevates the other. And because people feel smarter when they believe they've compared and decided for themselves, they walk away confident, not pressured. The decision feels theirs, but you've silently steered the path using human psychology's love of contrast as your guide. Overdeliver. Over-delivering is a psychological strategy that turns ordinary expectations into powerful loyalty. It works by giving more than what was promised, more value, more effort, more attention, so the recipient feels surprised, appreciated, and indebted all at once. Humans remember moments when reality exceeds expectation, and those moments create emotional imprints that last far longer than standard transactions. When you over-deliver, you don't just meet the agreement, you shatter the mental baseline of what was anticipated. This triggers a psychological bias known as the contrast effect. The gap between what someone expected and what they received creates a surge of positive emotion, often mixed with gratitude. That gratitude can turn into trust, and trust can turn into long-term influence. It can be as simple as finishing a project earlier than the deadline, adding an unexpected bonus, or providing extra care without being asked. The act says, I value you enough to go beyond what's required. People rarely forget that feeling. They're more likely to come back, recommend you, or reciprocate in ways that benefit you later. Over-delivering also shifts power subtly in your favor. When you give more than expected, you place the other person in a position of emotional debt, even if unspoken. This debt often leads them to seek ways to even the score, whether through loyalty, compliance, or generosity. The beauty of over-delivering is that it doesn't require grand gestures, just intentional touches that feel personal and thoughtful. In a world where most people aim for just enough, doing more makes you unforgettable, not because you demanded attention, but because you earned it without asking. Time limit. A time limit is one of the most direct and powerful psychological triggers for immediate action. When people believe they have only a short window to decide or act, their brain shifts from slow, analytical thinking into fast, instinctive decision-making. This is because time pressure activates urgency, and urgency bypasses hesitation. The thought of missing out is often more compelling than the benefits of the offer itself. This effect is rooted in loss aversion, the tendency to fear losing something more than we value gaining it. In our evolutionary past, opportunities like food sources, shelter, or a chance to escape danger often came and went quickly. Acting too late could mean losing them forever. That survival wiring still operates today. When a deadline looms, we feel an almost physical push to do something before the clock runs out. Marketers use time limits constantly. Sale ends tonight, only 24 hours left. Offer expires in 1 hour, because they know it interrupts procrastination and forces a choice. Even in personal persuasion, a time limit can break indecision. I can hold this spot for you until the end of the day. Or, if you want to join us, we're leaving in 10 minutes. The magic of a time limit is that it shifts focus away from overthinking and toward immediate action. It compresses the decision-making process, making later no longer an option. And when combined with genuine scarcity, it becomes almost impossible for the human brain to resist, because deep down, we'd rather make a quick decision than feel the sting of losing something forever. Controlled vulnerability. Controlled vulnerability is the deliberate act of revealing just enough personal truth to create trust, intimacy, and connection, without exposing so much that you lose authority or compromise yourself. It's the difference between sharing a glimpse of your humanity and spilling everything. When used well, it disarms defenses, makes you relatable, and draws people closer, because humans instinctively trust those who show they're not perfect. The psychology behind this is rooted in reciprocity and empathy. When you reveal something real, like a challenge you overcame, a fear you once had, or a small personal flaw, it signals authenticity. The listener feels invited into your inner world, which often prompts them to share in return. This exchange deepens rapport, creating a sense of we're in this together. The key is control. You choose what to share, when to share it, and how to frame it. The story should be personal enough to feel genuine, but strategic enough to serve your purpose. For example, a leader might admit to a past mistake to encourage openness among their team, or a negotiator might share a relatable struggle to break tension and foster trust. The emotional hook comes from the paradox it creates. You become stronger by showing a little weakness. People connect more with those who seem real than with those who appear flawless. However, too much vulnerability at the wrong time can shift perception from strong to unstable. The mastery lies in revealing just enough to make people feel close to you while still projecting confidence and competence. This balance makes you human, but still undeniably in control. Leading questions. Leading questions are a subtle yet potent psychological tool designed to guide someone's thinking without them realizing they're being steered. Instead of telling them what to believe, you frame your question so that the desired answer feels like the most natural response. It's influence disguised as curiosity, making people feel they're arriving at their own conclusion, when in reality, you've built the path for them. This works because of the brain's bias toward consistency. When asked a question that contains a built-in assumption or leans toward a certain perspective, people often respond in alignment with it to avoid the mental friction of disagreement. A question like, "How much better would things be if we tried this?" presupposes improvement, prompting the listener to imagine positive results instead of weighing pros and cons from scratch. Leading questions also activate the imagination, pulling focus onto specific outcomes or benefits you want them to consider. By directing attention, you make other possibilities fade into the background. Skilled negotiators, salespeople, and interrogators Use them to plant ideas while making the other person feel in control of the decision-making process. The beauty of this technique lies in its subtlety. Done right, it never feels manipulative. You're not forcing an answer, you're shaping the mental frame they're using to find one. And once someone voices the conclusion you've led them toward, it becomes far harder for them to reject it later, because now it feels like their own idea. Praise effort. Praising effort is a subtle yet deeply influential psychological technique that shapes how people see themselves and what they're willing to do for you. Instead of focusing on the outcome, you highlight the work, persistence, or creativity someone put into achieving it. This taps into a core human need to feel that our actions, not just our results, are valued. When people believe their effort is noticed, they're far more likely to push harder, take risks, and stay committed. The magic lies in what this type of praise does to the brain. Complimenting results alone can create pressure and fear of failure. People start avoiding challenges to protect their image. But praising effort fosters a growth mindset where mistakes are just part of the process and persistence is a badge of honor. By saying, "I can see how much thought you put into this," or "I really respect the way you stuck with it," you reinforce the belief that they have control over their success. This isn't just about being nice, it's strategic. Effort-based praise creates loyalty because it makes people feel truly seen. It validates the hidden struggles and invisible work others often overlook. Over time, they associate you with that feeling of recognition and are more likely to go the extra mile for you, simply because they know you'll notice. Leaders, teachers, and negotiators use this to inspire action without force. When you praise effort, you're not just rewarding what's been done, you're planting the seed for what they'll do next, because you've shown them that the journey itself matters as much as the destination. Timed eye contact. Timed eye contact is a subtle yet deeply influential psychological tool that can convey confidence, connection, or authority, depending on how you use it. Holding someone's gaze for just the right amount of time creates a sense of intimacy and presence, making your words feel more genuine and your presence more commanding. The key is in the timing. Too short, and you seem unsure or disengaged. Too long, and it feels aggressive or invasive. Humans instinctively read eye contact as a signal of intent. In our evolutionary past, holding someone's gaze could mean trust, attraction, or threat. It was never neutral. This is why eye contact still triggers powerful emotional responses today. When used deliberately, it can create tension, spark curiosity, or deepen a bond in seconds. The sweet spot often lies in maintaining eye contact just a moment longer than is typical before breaking away. This slight delay lingers in the other person's mind, making them feel seen, acknowledged, and, sometimes, slightly unsettled in a way that keeps their attention locked on you. It's the difference between a passing glance and a moment that feels personal. In persuasion and influence, timed eye contact can anchor key points in memory. Delivering your most important words while holding their gaze forces the brain to pair the message with emotional intensity. In relationships, it can build trust or create an electric sense of closeness without a single touch. Done right, it's an unspoken signal. I'm here, I see you, and this moment matters. And that unspoken message can be far more powerful than anything you could say aloud. Use we. Using the word we is a deceptively simple linguistic shift that can completely change the dynamic of a conversation. It transforms you and the other person from separate individuals into part of the same team, instantly creating a sense of unity, shared purpose, and mutual investment. This subtle change bypasses the natural me versus you mindset and replaces it with us together, which lowers resistance and builds trust. Humans are tribal by nature. We're wired to feel safer, stronger, and more committed when we believe we're part of a group. By framing ideas, plans or solutions in terms of we, you tap into this deep instinct for belonging. Instead of saying, you need to fix this, or I want this done, saying, we can fix this, or we can make this happen, changes the emotional equation entirely. The focus shifts from blame or obligation to cooperation and shared ownership. The psychological impact is immediate. People become more open to your suggestions because they feel you're working alongside them, not above or against them. Even in conflict, we softens the edge. It implies partnership in solving the problem rather than opposition. Skilled negotiators, leaders, and influencers use we to align themselves with others, even when their goals are self-serving. The beauty of this tactic is that it doesn't just change how the other person sees you, it changes how they see themselves in relation to you. Once someone starts thinking of you as part of their side, their defenses lower, and collaboration becomes the natural next step. Midtalk Compliment. A midtalk compliment is a strategic injection of praise placed right in the middle of a conversation when the other person's guard is down and their attention is fully on you. Unlike a compliment at the start, which can feel rehearsed, or one at the end, which can feel transactional, slipping it in mid-flow feels spontaneous and genuine, making it land with far greater emotional impact. This works because it catches people by surprise. In that moment, they're focused on sharing their thoughts or telling a story. So when you suddenly recognize something admirable, whether it's their insight, style, humor, or effort, their brain experiences a small rush of dopamine. That chemical reward not only makes them feel good in the moment, but also ties that feeling directly to you. The key is relevance. A mid-talk compliment should be linked to something they've just said or done, so it feels like an honest reaction, not a pre-planned tactic. If they share a clever idea, you might say, that's actually a brilliant way to look at it. If they recount a challenge they overcame, that shows a lot of grit, seriously impressive. The timing makes it feel organic, almost as if you couldn't help but say it. Psychologically, this technique builds rapport while reinforcing behaviors or traits you want to see more of. People naturally gravitate toward those who make them feel seen and valued. By placing the praise in the middle, you weave it seamlessly into the flow of connection, turning a simple exchange into something far more memorable and magnetic. People like you, the phrase people like you, is a subtle but highly persuasive psychological trigger that works by tying someone's behavior or decisions to their identity. Humans are deeply motivated to act in ways that are consistent with how they see themselves or how they want to be seen. When you say, people like you are always reliable, or people like you don't miss opportunities like this, you're not just making a statement, you're planting a seed that challenges them to live up to that image. This works because identity is a powerful driver of action. We make countless decisions not just based on logic or benefit, but on who we believe we are. If we see ourselves as loyal, honest, hardworking, or ambitious, we'll often go out of our way to prove it, especially when someone else frames that identity in a positive light. The genius of people like you is that it uses affirmation and subtle pressure at the same time. It feels like a compliment, but it's also a gentle nudge. If they agree with the description, they're more likely to take the action you're suggesting, because refusing would create an uncomfortable gap between their behavior and their self-image. Salespeople, leaders, and negotiators use this technique to align someone's sense of self with the desired outcome. It's not about manipulation. It's about giving them a role to play in a story they want to believe about themselves. When you say, people like you, with sincerity, you're not just influencing their choice, you're influencing the kind of person they want to be. Avoid don't. Avoiding the word don't is a subtle linguistic trick that can dramatically change how your message is received. The human brain struggles to process negation without first imagining the very thing you're telling it to avoid. If someone says, "Don't think of a pink elephant," your mind immediately sees a pink elephant. This means that every time you tell someone not to do something, you're planting the idea in their head before they can resist it. This is why phrases like, "Don't be nervous," often make people more nervous, and "Don't mess this up" can increase the chance of mistakes. The subconscious mind works in images and associations, and "don't" forces it to picture the undesired outcome before trying to reverse it. That momentary mental image can stick, influencing behavior in exactly the opposite way you intended. By replacing "don't" with positive direction, you guide the mind toward what you do want instead of what you fear. Instead of "Don't forget to call me," say, "Remember to call me." Instead of "Don't be late," say, "Be on time." This subtle shift frames the desired behavior as the primary mental image, making it more likely to happen. Parents, coaches, and leaders use this to increase compliance and reduce resistance. In Persuasion, it keeps the emotional tone positive, preventing the defensive reactions that "don't" can trigger. The power of this tactic lies in steering thoughts before they form, because the picture you put in someone's head is the one they're most likely to follow. Choices make no awkward. Offering choices that both lead to a favorable outcome for you is a psychological tactic that limits the other person's ability to reject you outright. Instead of asking a yes or no question, which makes it easy for them to decline, you present two or more appealing options. This subtly shifts their focus from whether they'll say yes to how they'll say yes. In doing so, you make no the most awkward and least natural response in the room. This works because the human brain prefers selection over outright refusal. Choices feel empowering. They create an illusion of control while you maintain the real control behind the scenes. The person still feels like they're deciding for themselves, which makes them more committed to following through. For example, instead of asking, "Do you want to meet this week?" you could say, "Would Tuesday or Thursday work better for you?" Now, the conversation assumes the meeting will happen, and their mental energy is spent choosing between your options instead of finding reasons to avoid the meeting entirely. This softens resistance and keeps momentum moving forward. The emotional pull comes from reducing confrontation. Most people don't enjoy saying no, especially in person. It risks tension, disappointment, or guilt. By framing your request as a set of choices, you give them a way to agree without feeling pressured, and you remove the need for them to defend a refusal. When executed with warmth and confidence, this tactic doesn't feel like a trap. It feels like cooperation, and in that comfortable space, people are far more likely to pick the path you've already set for them. Touch and release. Touch and release is a subtle physical influence technique that uses brief, intentional contact to create a burst of connection, warmth, or emphasis, followed by letting go before it lingers too long. Human touch, when applied appropriately, triggers the release of oxytocin, the bonding hormone, which fosters trust and positive feelings. But the real power of this technique lies in the release, ending the contact quickly enough to leave a psychological afterglow without crossing boundaries. When done right, a simple touch on the arm, shoulder, or back can make someone feel acknowledged, supported, or even subtly persuaded. The momentary nature makes it feel natural rather than intrusive, avoiding the discomfort that prolonged touch can create. It's the fleeting connection that lingers in their mind, making them replay the moment and associate you with warmth and confidence. Touch and release works because it operates below conscious awareness. Most people don't analyze a light touch in the moment, but their body responds to it instantly. It can soften resistance, amplify the impact of your words, or deepen rapport without a single extra sentence. In negotiations or influence scenarios, delivering a key point with a gentle, quick touch makes it more memorable and emotionally charged. The key is timing and appropriateness. This technique works best when the relationship and context make the touch feel natural, not forced. Too much, too soon, and it risks backfiring. But with the right moment, it becomes a quiet yet powerful signal. I see you, I'm here with you, and then, just as quickly, it's gone, leaving them wanting more of that unspoken connection. Ask in good mood. Asking in a good mood is a deceptively simple but highly effective psychological strategy that uses emotional timing to increase your chances of getting a yes. When people are in a positive emotional state, their brains are more open, flexible, and willing to take risks. A good mood softens critical thinking, boosts generosity, and makes cooperation feel natural rather than burdensome. This works because emotions shape decision-making far more than logic does. When someone is happy, their mind unconsciously looks for ways to maintain that feeling, and agreeing to your request becomes part of that emotional flow. The uplifted state reduces perceived risk and amplifies feelings of connection, especially if you've contributed to their good mood in the first place. The key is awareness and timing. You might notice their laughter after a joke, their excitement about good news, or their relaxed glow after a win. That's your moment. Instead of making your request when they're stressed, distracted, or irritable, you strike when their guard is down and their positivity is high. Even a difficult or demanding favor can seem lighter when framed in a moment of joy. Skilled influencers often engineer this state, warming people up with humor, praise, or shared success before presenting their ask. Whether it's a raise from your boss, a favor from a friend, or a sale to a customer, the odds tilt dramatically in your favor when their mood is already carrying them forward. In that emotional high, the choice to say yes doesn't feel like a decision. It feels like a continuation of their good day. Presuasion is the art of influencing someone's decision before you even make your request. Instead of diving straight into persuasion, you carefully shape the mental and emotional environment so they're already leaning towards saying yes when you finally ask. It's about priming the mind, subtly planting cues, ideas, or feelings that make your offer feel natural, obvious, and aligned with what they already believe or want. Humans are far more suggestible than they realize, and our choices are deeply affected by the context we're in just moments before making them. If you want someone to agree to a favor, get them talking about times they've helped others. If you want them to buy, get them thinking about quality, success, or exclusivity before showing your product. The mind unconsciously connects the dots, making your eventual proposal feel like the next logical step. This works because attention shapes perception. Whatever you get someone to focus on first acts like a lens for everything that follows. Skilled negotiators, marketers, and leaders use this to create emotional momentum before revealing their true goal. A question like, do you consider yourself someone who keeps promises? Right before asking for a commitment taps directly into their self-image, making refusal feel inconsistent with who they believe they are. The beauty of persuasion is its invisibility. The person doesn't feel pressured because the persuasion hasn't officially started. They feel like they're making a free choice. But in reality, you've tilted the entire playing field in your favor before the game even begins, ensuring the outcome is already moving in your direction. Scarcity in time. Scarcity in time is a psychological trigger that uses the pressure of a ticking clock to drive people toward faster decisions and stronger action. When something is only available for a short period, or when an opportunity is framed as fleeting, the brain shifts from calm evaluation into urgency mode. The fear of missing out takes over, and people often act quickly to secure what they believe might slip away. This works because humans are wired to value what's limited. Just as rare objects seem more precious, rare windows of time feel more important. A deal ending at midnight, a registration closing tomorrow, or a last chance to claim something creates a sense of now or never. The mind stops weighing every option and instead asks, if I don't act, what will I lose? That fear of regret can overpower hesitation, making people move before doubt can creep in. Time-based scarcity doesn't just push speed, it also increases perceived value. Even something ordinary feels special if it's about to vanish. This is why flash sales, countdown timers, and expiring invitations work so well. In conversations, it can be as subtle as, I can only hold this spot until the end of the day, or we're deciding by Friday. The emotional impact comes from compressing the decision-making window. With less time to think, people rely more on emotion than logic, and emotion often says, don't miss out. When executed with credibility and confidence, scarcity in time can turn hesitation into action and indecision into commitment, all because the clock is running out. Advice as story. Advice as story is a powerful psychological technique that bypasses resistance by wrapping guidance inside a narrative. Instead of telling someone directly what they should do, a move that can trigger defensiveness, you share a story about a similar situation or someone you knew who faced a comparable challenge. Humans are wired for storytelling. For thousands of years, we've passed down knowledge, warnings, and wisdom through tales, and our brains are far more receptive to lessons that unfold this way. When you frame advice as a story, you allow the listener to step into the role of the observer rather than the one being judged or instructed. This safe distance gives them room to process the message without ego or pride getting in the way. As they follow the journey of the story's character, their mind naturally makes connections to their own life, often arriving at the conclusion you intended, without you ever having to force it. The real power of this technique lies in emotional engagement. A well-told story activates sensory and emotional parts of the brain, making the listener feel the tension, relief, or transformation as if it were their own. By the end, the lesson doesn't feel like something you gave them. It feels like something they discovered for themselves. Skilled persuaders, leaders, and therapists use this constantly because advice delivered as a story sticks longer, feels more personal, and avoids the friction of direct instruction. When done right, the listener walks away believing they made the decision entirely on their own, even though you quietly guided them there from the first word. You're right. Saying you're right is a subtle but disarming psychological tactic that instantly lowers resistance and builds rapport. While I agree validates the content of what someone says, you're right validates them. It acknowledges their intelligence, their insight, and their authority in the moment, feeding a deep human need to feel understood and respected. When people hear you're right, they often relax, open up, and become more receptive to what comes next. This works because most arguments, negotiations, and disagreements aren't really about the facts. They're about ego and identity. People want to feel heard more than they want to hear your counterpoints. By telling them you're right, you remove the invisible wall of opposition and place yourself on their side, at least emotionally. This doesn't mean you have to fully agree. It means you recognize their perspective as valid. The magic is in timing and tone. Dropping "you're right" in the middle of tension can instantly diffuse it, shifting the conversation from combative to collaborative. Once their defenses lower, they're far more likely to listen to your perspective without seeing it as an attack. Skilled communicators use this phrase strategically, not as empty flattery, but as a way to create a bridge. Even if you only agree with part of what they said, acknowledging that part with "you're right" makes them feel respected. And when someone feels respected, they're far more willing to meet you halfway, compromise, or even reconsider their stance. In the right moment, those two words can turn a battle into a partnership. Looking busy is a subtle psychological tactic that can elevate your perceived value without you saying a single word. When people see you as in demand, occupied, or focused, they instinctively assume your time is valuable, and by extension, so are you. This perception taps into the scarcity principle. If your attention is hard to get, it must be worth more. Humans are wired to assign greater importance to things that seem rare or difficult to access. In social settings, a person who always seems available can be taken for granted, while someone who appears engaged and selective becomes more intriguing. In business, a professional who looks busy is often assumed to be competent, successful, and sought after. The mind subconsciously reasons, if others are taking up their time, they must be worth it. The trick is in balance. Looking busy doesn't mean being inaccessible or rushing around frantically. It's about controlled focus. Being seen immersed in meaningful work, keeping your phone calls short, or politely delaying responses sends the signal that your time is already allocated to important matters. Even small cues, like walking with purpose or maintaining a confident pace, can make others feel they need to earn your attention. This works in dating, negotiations, networking, and leadership. When someone finally does get your time, it feels like a privilege rather than an expectation. The result? People approach with more respect, urgency, and willingness to meet your terms because you've already shown, without saying it outright, that you are not endlessly available for the taking. Echo last words. Echoing someone's last words is a deceptively simple conversational technique that makes people feel deeply heard while encouraging them to reveal more than they initially intended. By repeating the final few words they just said, either exactly or with a slight upward inflection, you subtly invite them to elaborate without ever directly asking a question. This small act signals attentiveness and curiosity, which makes the other person instinctively want to continue. The psychology behind this is rooted in validation. When someone hears their own words mirrored back, they subconsciously feel understood, as if you're on the same wavelength. It bypasses the need for you to come up with clever responses or probing questions. Instead, you give them the space to keep talking while you quietly guide the flow of the conversation. For example, if they say, "It's been a really stressful week," and you respond with, "Stressful week?" they'll almost always elaborate, telling you exactly why it was stressful. The beauty is that they feel they're leading the conversation, when in fact, you're steering it with precision. This technique also builds rapport quickly because it taps into a deep human need, the desire to be heard and acknowledged. People often feel closer to those who seem genuinely interested in their stories, and echoing last words is one of the easiest ways to create that impression. When done with warmth and subtlety, not mechanical repetition, it becomes an almost invisible influence tool. You're not just listening, you're encouraging disclosure, deepening connection, and making them feel that their thoughts are important enough to echo back into the air. Fake urgency. Fake urgency is a psychological trigger that plays on one of the most powerful forces in human decision-making, fear of missing out. By creating the illusion that time is running out or opportunities are disappearing fast, you push people into making decisions more quickly than they normally would. The pressure of limited time narrows their focus, reducing overthinking and making immediate action feel necessary. This works because urgency hijacks the brain's survival instincts. When we believe something valuable might slip away, our mind treats it like a threat, flooding us with adrenaline and pushing us toward rapid choice. That's why sales with only 2 left signs, flash deals, and limited time offers work so effectively. They trigger a primal need to secure the resource before someone else does. The power of fake urgency lies in its ability to collapse hesitation. Without it, people may stall, overanalyze, or procrastinate. But when they feel the clock ticking, every second of delay feels costly. In Persuasion, this can turn a maybe later into a let's do it now. In negotiations, it can push someone to accept terms quickly rather than risk losing the deal. The key is believability. If urgency feels fabricated or exaggerated, it can destroy trust instantly. The illusion has to be just close enough to reality that it feels plausible. A limited stock, an expiring bonus, a window that will soon close. When executed with precision, fake urgency can move people from indecision to action in a heartbeat, making hesitation feel like the most dangerous choice they could make. Give half info. Giving half the information is a psychological tactic that uses curiosity and tension to pull people closer. Instead of laying everything out at once, you reveal just enough to spark interest, but leave out a critical piece, forcing their mind to lean forward and fill in the blanks. Humans are wired to crave closure. When we sense a gap in the story, our brain locks onto it, searching for the missing part until it's resolved. This technique works because partial disclosure creates a mental itch that demands scratching. If you say, "There's something I noticed about your plan," and then pause or change the subject briefly, the other person will feel compelled to ask you to continue. The desire for completion becomes stronger than their natural resistance, and you draw them deeper into engagement without pushing. It's especially powerful in persuasion, sales, and negotiations. By holding back certain details until the right moment, you maintain control of the conversation's emotional rhythm. You can build suspense, make your final reveal more impactful, or ensure they're fully invested before hearing the complete picture. The trick is balance. Give too little, and it feels manipulative. Give too much, and the curiosity dies. The sweet spot is when they feel they have almost enough to understand, but not quite. That almost creates urgency. It turns passive listeners into active participants and keeps you in control, because the one who controls the missing piece controls the pace, the focus, and ultimately the outcome. Flatter before critique. Flattering before critique is a psychological technique that softens defenses and makes people far more open to feedback. It works by delivering genuine praise first, creating a positive emotional state before introducing your criticism or suggestion for improvement. The initial compliment disarms the natural instinct to protect oneself, replacing it with a sense of being valued and respected. When people feel appreciated, they are far less likely to resist or reject what comes next. This approach is effective because it taps into the human need for recognition. When someone hears something positive about themselves, especially if it feels sincere, it releases a burst of dopamine, making them more receptive. Their brain shifts from "I'm being judged" to "I'm being understood," and the critique that follows is interpreted as guidance rather than attack. For example, instead of bluntly saying, "Your presentation was too long," you might start with, "You have such a natural way of keeping people engaged, and the information you shared was valuable." Once that praise lands, you can add, "If we could tighten the timing just a bit, it would hit even harder." The positive frame keeps their ego intact, making them more willing to adjust. This technique is common in leadership, teaching, and negotiations, but it works in personal relationships too. The key is authenticity. Forced or fake compliments are easy to spot and can backfire. When done genuinely, flattering before critique doesn't just make feedback easier to hear, it makes it more likely to be acted on because the person feels supported rather than attacked. Shared fate. The shared fate technique creates an instant sense of unity by making someone feel that their outcome is tied to yours. When people believe you're in the same boat, whether it's facing a challenge, chasing a goal, or enduring a struggle, they instinctively drop barriers and see you as an ally. It transforms the dynamic from me versus you into us together, which taps into a deep human instinct for cooperation and mutual survival. This works because throughout history, survival often depended on forming bonds with those who shared the same risks and rewards. When we believe our fates are linked, we are more inclined to trust, protect, and work with the other person. Even in modern settings, this primal wiring remains active. A coworker saying, "If this project fails, we both go down," or a friend confessing, "I'm in this mess with you," creates an emotional pact, one that makes people more open to collaboration and sacrifice. The emotional hook lies in solidarity. Shared fate removes the sense of isolation that can make problems feel heavier. Instead, the challenge becomes a joint mission, where victories are sweeter and setbacks are easier to bear. It builds loyalty fast, because abandoning you would feel like abandoning themselves. When used deliberately, shared fate can turn strangers into partners and opponents into reluctant allies. Whether it's true camaraderie or a calculated move, the moment someone believes your future is intertwined with theirs, they begin to fight for you as if they were fighting for themselves. Speak softer. Speaking softer is a counterintuitive yet highly effective psychological technique that commands attention by lowering, not raising, your volume. In a world where people compete to be heard by getting louder, reducing your voice forces the listener to lean in, physically and mentally, making them more engaged and focused on your words. It creates an intimate atmosphere where every syllable feels deliberate and meaningful. This works because humans instinctively adjust to their environment. When volume drops, the brain senses something important or secretive is being shared, triggering heightened focus. It's the same reason people hush their voices to share confidential information. Softness signals importance. By speaking more quietly, you subtly imply, "This matters, listen closely." A softer tone also conveys calmness and control. It's hard to imagine someone frantic or unsure lowering their voice in a tense moment. When you do it, you project authority without aggression, showing that you don't need to fight for space, you already own it. This can diffuse conflict, draw attention in group settings, and make your words feel heavier than if they were shouted. The key is intentionality. Speaking softer doesn't mean mumbling, it means clear articulation at a lower volume, paired with steady eye contact and a composed demeanor. When used at the right moments, especially after delivering a powerful idea or before revealing something important, it turns your voice into a magnet. People don't just hear you, they listen because they feel they might miss something if they don't hang on to every word. Reverse psychology. Reverse psychology is a clever psychological tactic that works by telling someone to do the opposite of what you actually want, knowing their natural instinct will be to resist your suggestion and do exactly what you hoped for. It plays on the human need for autonomy and control. When we feel our freedom is being restricted, we often push back, not necessarily because we disagree, but because we want to prove we can choose for ourselves. This technique works best with people who are naturally independent, stubborn, or resistant to being told what to do. If you say, "You probably wouldn't be interested in this," the challenge is irresistible. They lean in to prove you wrong. By framing the desired action as something they shouldn't or wouldn't do, you trigger their contrarian reflex and make it their idea to push forward. Parents use it on children, negotiators use it on clients, and leaders use it to subtly steer decision-making. For example, telling a hesitant customer, "This might not be the right fit for you," often makes them defend why it is. The magic is that once they start arguing for the thing themselves, they feel ownership over the choice, making it harder for them to back out later. The key is subtlety. If it's too obvious, it feels manipulative and loses its effect. When done with finesse, reverse psychology makes people feel they're acting on their own free will, even though you've quietly nudged them in that exact direction from the start. It's influence disguised as surrender, and it works because people will always fight harder for their own decisions. Imagine if. Imagine if is a psychological gateway that transports someone into a vivid mental experience before it even exists. Instead of debating facts or logic, you invite them to picture a reality where your idea has already come to life. The brain doesn't just process this as abstract thought, it feels it. Emotions, sensations, and even physical reactions can ignite just from the act of imagining, and those feelings are what drive decisions. When you say, "Imagine if you woke up tomorrow debt-free," or "Imagine if your business doubled its sales next month," you bypass skepticism and take them straight into the outcome. The mind begins building that world automatically, seeing it, hearing it, tasting it, until it feels real enough to want. And once a person emotionally steps into that reality, they often start looking for ways to make it happen. This works because humans are storytellers by nature. We think in narratives, and "imagine if" hands the listener the opening line of a story where they're the main character. That personal ownership over the vision creates investment. It also lowers resistance because you're not forcing agreement. You're simply asking them to explore a possibility. Marketers use it to make products irresistible. Leaders use it to inspire action. Negotiators use it to reframe opportunities. And in personal relationships, it can reignite excitement or hope by painting a picture of what's possible. The real magic? Once someone's mind has lived inside that imagined future, returning to their current reality feels smaller, and they naturally lean toward the path that gets them back to what they just felt. Opposite first. The opposite first technique is a psychological strategy where you begin by stating the opposite of what you actually want, making your true position seem more reasonable and acceptable when you reveal it. This works because human brains naturally compare options, and by presenting a more extreme or less desirable stance first, you make your real goal feel like a fair compromise rather than a demand. It taps into a principle known as contrast effect. Our perception of something changes when compared to what came before it. If you lead with an exaggerated position, your true request feels lighter, easier, and far more agreeable by comparison. For example, if you want a 2-week deadline, you might first suggest an impossible 2-day deadline, knowing they'll push back, and then concede to 2 weeks, which was your real target all along. The emotional power lies in how this technique flips resistance. By starting with something they can reject, you allow the other person to feel they've won a negotiation. This triggers reciprocity. They're more inclined to meet you halfway because they think you've already met them halfway too. It also reframes your actual request as the reasonable middle ground, even if it was your intended goal from the start. When used skillfully, opposite first doesn't feel manipulative. It feels like collaboration. The key is delivery. Your initial suggestion must be believable enough to engage with, but bold enough to make your real position feel like relief. Done right, it turns stubborn no's into easier yeses and makes compromise feel like their idea, not yours. Save their face. Saving someone's face is a psychological strategy built on preserving another person's dignity, even when they've made a mistake, lost an argument, or been proven wrong. Humans have a deep need to protect their self-image in front of others. When that image is threatened, pride and ego rise to defend it, often leading to resistance, anger, or even retaliation. By allowing someone to exit a situation without public embarrassment, you keep their pride intact, which in turn keeps the relationship and your influence intact. This works because humiliation is one of the most painful social experiences. When people feel cornered or exposed, they're less likely to cooperate and more likely to push back out of sheer self-preservation. But if you give them a graceful way out, softening your words, redirecting the focus, or subtly shifting blame away from them, you reduce the sting and make it easier for them to accept reality without fighting you. In negotiations, this might mean rephrasing a rejection so it sounds like a strategic decision on their part. In personal conflicts, it could mean acknowledging a misunderstanding rather than flat out calling them wrong. The goal isn't to let bad behavior slide, it's to create a resolution that doesn't leave lasting resentment. When you save someone's face, you're also sending an unspoken message. I value this connection more than scoring a win in this moment. That act of respect can deepen trust, making them far more likely to work with you in the future. In influence, it's not always about being right. It's about keeping the door open for what comes next. Unique help request. A unique help request is a psychological technique that taps into the human desire to feel special, capable, and irreplaceable. Instead of asking for help in a generic way, you frame your request so it sounds like only they have the skills, insight, or qualities to do it right. When people feel uniquely qualified, they become far more motivated to say yes, not just to help, but to live up to the role you've given them. This works because it strokes both ego and identity. If you say, I'm asking you because you have a perspective no one else does, you're not just making a request, you're giving them a compliment disguised as responsibility. It makes them feel chosen, seen, and important, which creates a subtle emotional bond and a personal stake in the outcome. The effect is amplified when you tie the request to something they value about themselves. If they see themselves as resourceful, creative, trustworthy, or decisive, and you position your ask as requiring exactly those traits, they'll feel almost obligated to follow through. Saying no would mean contradicting the very qualities they're proud of. Skilled persuaders use this in sales, negotiations, and personal relationships to secure cooperation where a standard request might fail. By making the help feel exclusive, you transform it from a favor into an opportunity for them to prove their worth. It's not just about getting them to say yes, it's about making them want to say yes, because in doing so, they get to be the person they most like to believe they are.